Good evening. I'm calling this meeting to order at 7:02. All members of the council are present with the exception of Councilor Costell, who could not be with us tonight. I would ask that you rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have been reading a land acknowledgement, which I will now read to you at the outset of our meetings. Akine, peace. We recognize the unique and enduring relationship that exists between indigenous peoples and their traditional territories. We acknowledge that we are in the ancestral homeland of the Pokanoket tribe within the original territory of the Pokanoket Nation. We commit to ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Pokanoket people whose ancestral lands and water we benefit from today. Akine, peace. For the next order of business, I would ask our town manager, Phil Hervey, to take us through announcements. Phil?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a few announcements here. The Bayside Pride Festival will be on Friday, July 29th. The times are different than what's showing on the agenda. Friday's movies, it will be between 4 and 6 p.m. at the library. And on Saturday, the event will take place between 12 and 2 p.m. The last day to register to vote is Sunday, August 14th at the Public Safety Building until 4 p.m. Early voting begins Wednesday, August 24th in the Council Chamber. The last day to vote early is Monday, September 12th at 4 p.m. There's a blood drive on Tuesday, August 30th from 2 to 7 p.m. It's pint for pint. People donating who are 21 and over, if you give a pint of blood, you receive a voucher to get a pint of beer at participating breweries. Location is the Government Center or Town Hall / library parking lot. The tree planting and removal update, May 1st, 2021 through April 30th, 2022, 77 trees removed, 79 trees planted, and then the update for July 21st, 2021 through June 30th of this year, 69 trees removed, 80 trees planted. Those are the announcements.
Thank you. The next series of items on our agenda are the what we call the consent agenda. These are usually items that are considered routine, and they're typically enacted by one motion. There won't be a separate discussion on these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, and the request is for good cause, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. Does any member of the council have any part of the consent agenda they'd like to remove for separate discussion?
So I had an item I wanted to highlight but not remove.
Sure.
And it's from the DPW report. I noticed that the recycling percentage seemed low, so I went back and looked, and probably about 18 months or so ago, they were regularly, our recycling percentage was regularly over 50%, and lately it's been 45% and lower. And so I don't know if that's just in the nature of consumption or if there might be some promotion we can do around recycling and also around composting that can get that percentage back up, because it saves the town a lot of money.
Sometimes it's because they've rejected loads. Alan, is Alan here? Yes. Have we been getting loads rejected?
This past month in June, we had 2 loads rejected due to rain, so we had excess moisture. It could also be there was a lack of storm damage, so we do get credit for composting. So we haven't had a lot of debris, which had helped us in the past couple of years, believe it or not. So, okay, thank you.
Probably makes sense for us to all realize that if the paper goods are wet and soggy, they will frequently be rejected. That means the whole load. So do what you can to keep them dry in the rain. Anything else, Councilor Breyer? Okay. Any other member of the council? Any member of the public have anything from the consent agenda that they'd like removed? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Next item on our agenda is to discuss and act on interviews and appointments. And we have a number of applicants for the Library Board of Trustees, a full member vacancy. Is Barbara Burke here? Please come forward. I'm sorry, it's a little bit, intimidating, I guess, with that.
You
So,
can say that again, but
Well,
that's okay.
thank you for coming in tonight.
Well,
Please
thank you for having me.
tell us a little about yourself
I-
and what you can bring to the Board of Trustees.
I'll be happy to do that. And you know what? I'm going to even put a time limit on myself because I can get carried away. I am Barbara Burke. I've lived here for 22 years. I originally am from upstate New York, south of Rochester, dairy farming country. I went to Boston College, graduated from there, moved to New York City, lived there for 9 years, worked as a real estate, commercial real estate paralegal for a big law firm, then moved to Chicago, did the same there for 3 years, and eventually found my way to Barrington with my husband and our 4 kids in 2000. And we have loved living in this community. And I have to say, one of, I think, the greatest resources is the library here in town. It's fantastic, and it has so many opportunities for so many different reasons and purposes and people. So how can I contribute to the Board of Trustees? I guess my most relevant experience is, beyond my past work experience, is that I have run a nonprofit for 12 years since I've been in Barrington. Back in 2005, when my parents passed away, a friend of theirs who was a Catholic priest, originally from Kenya and part of the Maasai tribe, told me about his desire to build an elementary school, a boarding elementary school in Narok, Kenya, which is just outside the Masai Mara. And he wanted to do it for his tribe, the Maasai people, because they're nomadic people, so they don't actually have schools, in established communities. So from 2005 to 2009, I worked very diligently with him to establish a 501c3 charitable organization, to do significant fundraising to actually build the school. We built classrooms and dorms and a community center, and complied with all sorts of rules and regulations, as well as establishing the school and the charter, and it's a self-sustaining school. And in 2009, we opened the school up, January of 2009, and it's still going. It's very successful, fortunately, and there are about 220 children that go to that school today. So that experience has been very rewarding for me, and it's also developed, I think, some organizational and administrative skills, I think. I would love to be able to utilize some of that by contributing closer to home here at the library. And I think that's it. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to tell you about myself. I hope it didn't annoy anybody behind me. And that's it. If you have any questions, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Oh, good. I have 1 minute and 30 seconds left, so.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
willingness to serve.
Thanks.
The next person on the is Esme DeVault. Good evening. Thanks for coming in.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Could you tell us a little about yourself and what you can bring to the Library Board of Trustees?
Sure. I graduated from URI about 1,000 years ago. I was an English teacher. I taught overseas in the Peace Corps as well as at the training school here in Rhode Island. And then I decided to go to library school at URI and become a librarian. So I was an academic reference librarian in Boston at Wheelock College. I oversaw reference, collection development, and instruction for the library. Prior to that, I was the head of access services at the library. I also was an evening reference librarian at Tufts University at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. For some insane reason, I decided to leave that behind and go to law school, and I rue the day frequently that I made that decision. But I went to Roger Williams, and currently I'm an attorney advising the Supreme Court and the Appellate Screening Unit. So what I bring to the library besides my librarianship experience is I am probably the most uber patron of this library that has ever existed. Little exaggeration, but we've been living in town for 25 years, and from the time my son was a little boy, we would come to the library every Sunday and just collect mountains of books. I literally studied for the bar exam and passed because of this library. I've been running a book group at the women's prison for 10 years, and I have accessed thousands of books for those women through this library. I've probably used every museum pass, taken every writing class, done every single thing that they offer. So I feel like it would be a fit for me because I have not just the librarianship experience, but also on the other side of the desk being a very demanding patron and seeing all the wonderful things that the library has to offer. I also feel like I have a good handle on the community. My son went to school here all the way through, from Primrose to graduating from the high school last year. So I know the parents and the kids, the seniors. I don't know, because we've been here so long. So that's what I think.
Great. Any questions? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is Jordan Jankasek here? Hi, Jordan. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks. I'm glad that lowers. I always have that problem. Hi, thank you for having me. So I guess a little bit about myself. I'm Jordan Jankosik. I moved here 2 years ago in May 2020. I graduated from Oberlin College and went on to library school at Simmons University, and I graduated from there with a dual master's in 2015. So yeah, I'm a librarian, an archivist to be exact, over at Brown University. But I actually don't think it's my librarianship that makes me an advocate for this position. It's what libraries mean to me and how I've grown up with them, and more particularly now, how my 1-year-old daughter interacts with the town library. I had written on my application what looks like a quirky little tidbit that I saved a library in my town when I was 6. This is true. I filed a lawsuit with my father. They were going to close all of the city of Hammond, Indiana libraries and make one giant branch. When my parents told me this was happening, my response was, I can't walk to the main branch at Hammond. And this seemed like a very reasonable thing to my father, and took me and I filed a lawsuit and kept it open. They closed it a month after we moved. But, you know, in kind of preparation for this, I looked back, you know, why my father even decided to back my little cause about this. And the reason that they chose to close the library was because of low circulation numbers. A library is so much more than the books that the patrons check out. It's about a place that a little girl can go and read. It's about interacting with the librarians. My daughter is such a user of the library room at 1 year old, and not only are the librarians wonderful, they know her by name now, but she meets little kids there. I think people like to say that libraries are a cornerstone of a community, but when push comes to shove, libraries are often the first where budgeting is cut. They're the first to be closed. On that note, I'm also involved with my Oberlin College. I was a swimmer there with the Heisman Board. It's the Booster Club. I work very closely with the treasurer there in the budget, and I've been involved there since I graduated 12 years ago now. But yeah, so I really think that even though I'm young and I haven't lived here that long, I would be an incredibly beneficial member to the library board. My expertise coming from library school is valuable, but I think I know what libraries really bring to the community, and that's why I want to join.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Questions?
Thank you.
Ethan Stein. It's Ethan. Ethan, please come forward. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. I'm Ethan Stein. I lived here with my family for just about 6 or 7 years. I have children in now the middle school and the high school. I grew up in New Jersey. I'm feeling a little underqualified, by the way, in the way of libraries now, having heard a couple of the people, but I went to Princeton and then Fordham Law School. I'm a private practice lawyer. I represent companies who get sued in products liability cases. It has no relevance really to library work, but I have served on nonprofit boards. I've counseled, nonprofit radio stations and helped, just in other organizations that somewhat are related to Princeton, but I don't have any actual municipal experience in terms of advising municipal boards or anything relating to the operation of a town or a library. But like some of the other people speaking, I have had just a history here of being not only a patron and my whole family being patrons of this library and enjoying everything from concerts and evening activities and just the regular taking out of books, but I also, like everybody else, just believe in the mission, the need for a strong library. I feel like I can bring my skills to bear in terms of possibly advising if there's any need for, I'm not saying legal representation, but just in terms of counseling, using my own judgment. I have worked in the past also. Before I became a lawyer, I worked in the music industry, and I worked in an agency that organized concerts for concert artists, that was in New York City. But in general, I believe in the mission of the library. I believe in also that, libraries are an organization, as has been referenced, that are sometimes under threat. I don't want any, diminishment of the power and the purpose of this library, and I want to make sure that it just remains as strong as it always has been. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Stein. No need to feel underqualified. We are. I know, but we absolutely do. We have an embarrassment of riches once again, and I think sometime soon we're probably going to have to choose between a couple of Nobel laureates or something. Everybody is so qualified for this, and so we're taking notes and taking your names down. So you're going to be recruited for other boards and commissions. So I appreciate you coming in. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I just want to throw out a couple of things. And I know, Chris, you must be thrilled as you look towards these volunteers, as library volunteers. I'm the liaison for the Library Board of Trustees, and unfortunately, because of personal reasons, I haven't been able to attend all the recent meetings. However, I do know that the Library Board of Trustees has been very interested in Esme's candidacy for this position. However, I have to say it's a very difficult decision to make, and I support their decision, but I would advise, like Mike said, each of you to look at open commissions and committees. We always have roles open. And I think, Jordan, I love that you sued the library in your hometown. I mean, that is a classic story, so I think you should keep an eye open for the next opening in this one. But I would like to make a motion to nominate Esme DeVault to the Library Board of Trustees as a full member for a term to expire on December 31st, 2022.
Okay. A motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, everybody, so much. The next interview is for Resilience and Energy. We have a vacancy for the first alternate with an end date of November 30th, 2023. And is Mike Smith here? There. Please come forward, Mr. Smith. Thanks for coming in tonight. Can you tell us a little about yourself and what you can bring to resilience and energy?
Sure thing. Thank you. Thanks for having me. So my name is Mike Smith. I just completed my 11th day as CFO and assistant head of school at St. Andrews here in town. My wife and I have relocated to the area after spending more than 20 years in the Washington, D.C. area. I'm originally from Massachusetts, went to school in Virginia, met my wife and stayed there. But we have an 18-year-old daughter who's going to Providence College in the fall, and felt like a good time to relocate to New England, and I had this great opportunity at St. Andrews. Most relevant to this committee, I spent the last 7 years as a chief business officer for the Solar Energy Industries Association, SEIA. SEIA is a large national trade association representing over 1,000 solar energy and renewable energy companies, advocating for strong renewable energy policies, not just nationally, but locally and statewide as well. As chief business officer, I oversaw essentially all of our operations there, but also engaged fully with our policy teams, our advocacy groups, identifying key policies for expanding renewable energy across the United States, identifying communities and states that were doing things well, and how we could advocate to replicate those throughout the country. And I think it's a really important, it was a mission that I was very proud to be a part of, and bring that perspective to this committee as we all seek for ways to improve the resilience of our grid, improve the green footprint of the town, which is something I'd be very interested in being part of. So that's it.
This committee has been really instrumental, and they've really led the way with our town manager, former town planner, in Solarize Barrington, two programs that really spread solar panels throughout town at no cost really to, in fact, we made a little profit on it, sort of surprisingly to the town, but we've managed to get a lot of people, and I think they're looking for the chance to do kind of a Solarize 3. So you're applying at just the right time.
Great.
So thank you. Any questions for Mr. Smith? Okay.
Thank you
very much.
Appreciate it.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Mike Smith as a first alternate on the Resilience and Energy Committee with a term end date of November 30, 2022.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is public comment. This is for a 3-minute statement for the public to speak on a topic that's not already on the agenda. If you want to speak, please raise your hand, and when you're recognized, please state your name and residency for the record. Does anyone want to be heard for public comment? Please come forward. Right there is great.
Good evening. I'm Lauren Schlanger. I live at 2 Haynes Park Road in Barrington. And I just wanted to make a comment on behalf of the neighbors group that surrounds the Haynes Park area as we've been attending meetings, and this is kind of in line with what we have been saying, but I believe it might be up some of the funding that would be helping to move forward with the first part of the Haynes Park proposal or renovation is going to be voted on tonight. So I wanted to just speak behalf on everyone of the neighbors of the park and say we feel very strongly that there's the need for additional public community engagement with the process of moving forward with what plans might be coming to action. There's been a little bit of opportunity for that, which we very much appreciate with the previous meeting last month, but we feel there's definitely the need for the opportunity for further community engagement and for the opportunity for concerns to be raised and for solutions to be determined before moving forward with any of the park plans, and some of those being an environmental impact study, traffic impact study, and whatnot. So I'll leave that out there, but that was something we all felt very strongly about. Thank you. Any questions or clarifications? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Would anyone else like to be heard? Please, sir, come forward.
Good evening. My name is Steve Clemens. I live at 30 Homestead Avenue in Barrington, Rhode Island as well. I'd like to concur with Lauren's views that any action that is going to happen tonight about Haynes Park or the priorities of Haynes Park with regard to funding of that project is a little premature because we've had one meeting with Parks and Recreation. The results of that meeting, it's not clear whether it's been transmitted to the council or not. But at that meeting, the chair of that committee agreed to have another meeting with residents nearby who couldn't attend to the first one. So please consider delaying action on Haynes Park for tonight's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Next item on the agenda is to discuss and act on the transfer of a paper street and compensation at Latham Avenue and Shore Drive. Recusing, okay. We have in front of us a couple of options. This is a paper street that actually runs into the marina. What is it called now? Lighthouse Marina, right. One of those options is to approve it, another is to refer this to the planning board to ask for their input. My own preference is that we refer it. We have these boards for a reason, so I think we should do that, but I'll just open it up if anyone has. Phil, please go ahead.
I was going to add, I provided a revised, is this picking up? I can't tell. A revised motion in the revised memo where it would be referred to the planning board as well as you would schedule the public hearing, which is required for September 12th at the next meeting.
Okay. I have pages I think are off. Okay. Any further? No. Anyone from the public? Okay. I'll make a motion to refer the request to abandon paper streets at Lighthouse Marina to the planning board for recommendation and to schedule a public hearing to be held on September 12, 2022 at the town council meeting.
Second.
Made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And one abstention and one absence. The next item on the agenda is to discuss and act on restrooms at the town athletic fields. And Coach Hum has brought this to our attention, so I'll ask him to take us through this.
Yeah, so I'll just give the background for the folks who are here. I spoke about it at the last town council meeting we had, but this issue came up. One youth league coach in particular had approached me back in the early spring, about April or so, and this person coached a 9-year-old girls lacrosse team at the middle school, and on a daily basis he was having at least one and usually multiple girls who had to go to the bathroom during practice, which kids are known to do, and there were no bathrooms, and they had to go, and they ended up going in the woods, which is a very uncomfortable position, and this coach was in a very uncomfortable position as an adult male with young females going to the bathroom in the woods. And if you've seen the middle school woods after the work they've done, they're not as dense as they used to be, and there's really nowhere to go. So it's not an unfamiliar situation. It's something that the town has heard quite often from time to time. I've been a coach as well, where kids have to go to the bathroom, and frankly, I've sent them into the woods, and I don't feel comfortable doing that, and I don't think that's acceptable. And going around to other towns throughout the state, I'd say more often than not, it seems as if there's a restroom facility, whether a permanent facility or some kind of portable temporary facility. And one of the easier solutions, at least in my mind, was to see if we could get portable restrooms at our athletic fields. It seemed to me to be a basic service for, we have a very robust youth sports league program, but it's not just limited to that. It's limited to participants, parents, grandparents, friends, family, little kids. I shared another anecdote at the last meeting. I was at a soccer game at Chinese, and I'm watching my son play, and another parent is running by with her 3-year-old like a football in her arms, sprinting to her car. And I said, "Where are you going?" And she said, all 3 of those bathrooms there are locked. So I got to run home. My daughter has to go to the bathroom, and she's not going to be able to hold it. So, that's just another example in terms of the importance of having it at our fields. What's been proposed for tonight, and there's no specific proposal, but at our last meeting, we referred this matter to the Parks and Rec Committee, to the DPW, and to the schools, because a number of our youth athletic fields are at the schools. And we got some recommendations, some very good recommendations. I was at the Parks and Rec discussion. They had a great discussion on the issue. I've spoken a lot. I don't know how much you want me to summarize, either Phil or somebody else. I'm happy to continue, but I'm also happy to stop talking because I feel like I've just talked a lot.
I wanted to add something that you mentioned before and that I've heard since as well. There are some leagues that actually pay out of their own pocket for portable bathrooms. And it does seem a bit unfair for some leagues to sort of carry the rest of the team on their back, while other leagues are often using those, or those bathrooms get locked when those leagues aren't doing it. So I think it makes all the sense in the world to have bathrooms available. Phil, did you want to kind of lay out or maybe Alan could lay out the DPW position? Would you mind? Thank you.
Yeah, what I provided was a memo, sitting down with John Rinquin and myself and Colin O'Hara. And what we put together was basically a bare bones, what we thought was the minimum that the bathroom should be at these facilities. I can't speak for the schools, but what I have noticed that the high school, a lot of times the bathrooms will be open inside the building, so you can use those after hours, but it depends if there's a custodian working. And that I can't determine and I can't tell you, so that's why I said at least 1 at the high school. And then 2 at the middle school, 1 at Soames School, 2 at Chinese, 1 at St. Andrews Field, and 2 at Haynes Park, 1 for each field, and 1 at Bicknell Park for the baseball and soccer. And this would be a general use for all the sports leagues and allow, any kind of activities to be. I have kids too, so believe me, I know the bathroom situation. I have 2 daughters. This was something just the starting point, and then you can take it from there, how you guys feel, what we thought. I mean, one thing we did notice that there are bathrooms at Vets and Chinese, but they would be trashed at times when we left them open. And what the leagues were doing were taking a key, and they were policing it after hours, because we don't have people working after hours. And as long as they policed it, those bathrooms stayed okay. But we had some terrible things happen, toilets ripped off the walls, and some tough things. So as long as it's policed, the bathrooms could stay open. But that's the hard part. I mean, that I can't, unless we had somebody working after hours and checking bathrooms. So that's another factor if you wanted to. But the portable restrooms, are definitely a starting point. It would have to be, they possibly could, the portable bathrooms could be tethered so that they're not knocked over or something like that. I don't recommend encaging them because it's hard for the vendor to service them and pull them in and out. So that's all I have to say.
Did we consider one at Walker Farm for the folks who do crew and the kayakers?
I didn't list it here, but that's a good point, and I think there's definitely some mornings and evenings that there's a lot of people there, so we've got a good crowd, so it could be easily added here.
Okay.
And like I said, this is a starting point, so if there's Park and Rec or anyone else feels to add more, this is just something that we put together.
Yes. Thank you.
I just have a question. Thanks, and thanks for looking into this. One question I had was about the permanent facility at Chinese, and I understand the history and probably walked in and seen it that way in the past, which is too bad. I'm wondering if that's something that you would be opposed to at least giving another try, or if anything on a temporary basis. And the reason I ask is, so, you know, right now the recommendation from DPW would be 10 portable restrooms. And that actually, that doesn't include, looking at just the youth sports leagues, and actually that doesn't count Walker Farm, but obviously happy to discuss. You know, certainly some are left off in terms of the St. Andrews field, not the school, but the other one that has lacrosse, and I think maybe sometimes soccer, or I know Nayet has youth league baseball, Primrose has soccer, baseball, and some other sports perhaps.
Right.
So it's a matter of cost, and you know, kind of trying to divvy out the right place to put these portable facilities if we do that. And another thing, and I'm probably jumping the gun in terms of what Parks and Rec might have to offer, but the estimate that we had initially had about a month and a half ago was just the regular standalone porta potties that, you know, some of the sports leagues currently do provide, and then, you know, maybe they lock if they're not using it. But that was the assumptions that we were going on. But the recommendation from Parks and Rec, and then subsequently from the schools, was to provide ADA compliant portable restrooms, and that doubled the cost of each restroom. And that's kind of one of those, you know, it's too bad, but it's an extremely important point, you know. So from a price standpoint, you kind of have to deal with that. So at least in my opinion, I don't want to speak for anybody else. Mm-hmm. So in terms of you know, presenting those facts, do you think, you know, whether on a trial basis or some sort of basis, we could see how the town could do with the permanent restroom facility at Chinese becoming usable again, similar to like you know, I know Sherwood has one, and I haven't heard any complaints, although I'm sure there's probably things from time to time if I had to guess.
Yeah, that's also locked, and basically Little League has the key, and
Okay.
It's also their concessions building, so they have food and beverages that they sell and they control. So we don't have access to it. It's kind of their type of thing. So when they have an event, they open it up.
Okay. Yeah, so in any event, that would just be, you know, that would be just my thought, and I'm interested to see what you think about that, if that's an option, or if that's something that just based on your experience you don't think it's possible.
We can give it a try, and absolutely, and see how it goes, and just hopefully, you know, everything goes well. So give it a shot. So.
Okay, thank you.
Before we move on to Parks and Rec, any other questions, Ronna?
I guess the only question that I would have is around the enclosures, and just that was something that I thought we talked about last time, kind of leaning towards the more permanency, but I'm interested in Alan saying that it's not, it makes it more difficult for the consultant to take care of the porta potties, so I'm just interested in that, because I do think that reduces the cost a bit, and I agree, I don't think we can have non-ADA compliant porta potties. We could have, maybe if there are two, maybe one is standard and the other one is ADA compliant, but I'm interested in the enclosure piece.
Yeah, I would recommend that. Like, say, for instance, the two at the middle school, one could be the ADA and one could be a standard, and that could save even $100, a month. I mean, that adds up. But the enclosures, in talking to the vendors, it's hard to get in there, maneuver, and work, and they'd have to be caged every night, and then you get into the key issue, and it brings up the same issue we have with Chinese, where someone's going to have the key, unless, once again, we police it all night. And I don't know if we want to get in that business of having people have to be here. And I'd rather give it a shot and try the porta potties and opening Chinese and see how it goes from there. And then if we do have problems, then we try to address them or work something out as a trial and error type thing.
Thank you. Okay. And Parks and Rec provided some input. Did you want to speak to this, Mike? The chair of Parks and Rec, Mike Seward, is here.
Quickly, the list that Alan provided was essentially our list. Didn't include Primrose Hill or Soane School. And then there was, as mentioned, the ADA stipulation with the Park and Recreation vote. But the Park and Recreation Commission supported it. Okay. And I don't know, there is this spreadsheet that kind of lays it out. Might be helpful. Okay.
Thank you. One of the things that, I wondered about, especially if it's going to be increasing in price, is whether the leagues would be willing to offset that cost. I know that some leagues are already paying for it, so they would certainly see a reduction in their overall costs. Other leagues aren't paying for it, and that could be paid for by increase in the fees. We charge a per person, per player fee. And I'm not suggesting that we put this all on the leagues. I think the leagues do a great service for our town. And anyone who doesn't think so, just imagine all those kids running around with nothing to do. So I think we can certainly bear much of the cost, but if they were to contribute a bit, maybe $1 more a player or something like that, that would help us to get these expensive things. And I wonder what everybody thinks about that.
Yeah, thanks. And actually, it was interesting to see in the materials, and Michelle, thanks for putting that together, what the cost would be for the leagues. So it looks like each $1 equates to $1,700 for available use. So one of the examples that was provided was an increase per player of $5.89 would raise $10,000. So, doing the very quick math in terms of the numbers that we're looking at, so taking, let's say there's hypothetically 10 portable restrooms. If they're all ADA compliant at $250, and the recommendation, I think, from DPW was from April to November, because April and November do get some kind of spill-off sports at the beginning and the end. I think that would be $20,000 by my calculator math, because I can't do real math. And $20,000 is a lot of money, but if that's something that could be offset even at least in half or something like that, that was about, in my opinion, about what I had in mind initially when this issue came up. So I don't have an opinion quite yet one way or another. I'm interested to see what other people think, but I will have an opinion, and we'll take it from there.
Anyone from the public want to be heard on this? Please.
I think parents of the kids that play in the sports leagues would buy in.
Well, I think so too, and I do think it's kind of a fairness thing, especially with some leagues paying for it already. We did have a large hue and cry over fees, field fees before. I think this is a kind of more direct fee-for-service kind of thing.
We've all sent our kids into the woods. I'm not
Yeah.
talking about it from my experience too.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so,
There's another question.
oh, please, sir.
Just relative to the bathrooms, about several years ago, one of the plastic porta potties at Haynes Park was burned to the ground. Just a massive plastic. I mean, agreed that facilities are needed, but it's a problem.
Yeah.
Keeping them. It's a real problem.
And I would add to that, I live across from one of the fields, so I see all of the nighttime activities in the park, and there are constantly people coming in and out deep into the parking lots and where the bathroom is at all hours of the night, doing things that are probably not supposed to be done in the park. And I can only imagine what, the challenges, but I agree that there should be bathroom facilities for, where humans need to use the facilities, obviously, but I can imagine the challenges that might come up to keeping those in good working order in that location.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so how do we want to proceed on this? My suggestion would be that we can have a motion, and then the fees are not generally handled by any particular committee. In this case, Parks and Rec is probably closest to it because they're, closest connection to the leagues. But we could refer it to the town manager and his staff, and if Parks and Rec wants to opine on that would be great too. On the idea, the sort of specific idea of whether to increase the player fee to offset that cost.
And if I could just say-
Mike, I'd just like to say that part of the Park and Recreation Commission vote was to not charge fees for these to the leagues.
Okay.
All right.
Was that where you?
Yeah, no, so I was going to say that I'd be hesitant to not make some sort of decision tonight. One of the reasons that we put it on this agenda is this is the next meeting and the last meeting before the fall sports season starts. So our next meeting, I think, is in September. So we would already miss a month and half another month, and then whatever additional time it takes to get these up and going if we're to approve it. My only question, Mr. Seward, on that is that was under the prior assumption of, I think at the time it was $120 per porta potty, and now it's up to $250. So that I mean, I'm not going to ask to put you on the spot, but rhetorically, does that change the dynamic of whether there needs to be any limited amount of assistance or not? I was dead set against that as well at the time. I mean, I'm curious, maybe Michelle or anybody else who has insight on that. I mean, how would the leagues take a $6 increase per person if there were bathrooms at every facility? I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
In my opinion, the $6 would be a bit much, I think.
Okay.
And I would be more inclined to go with $3 as their portion of it, because I do think it's a town responsibility as well to contribute towards this.
Okay.
So,
Please.
I'm going to flip back on something I said at our last meeting. I think, given the fact that we've had many registrations already happen for the fall sports, and I personally know that I've committed my life savings to my children's soccer careers, I would suggest that this year the town takes the bill, and that we look towards next year to see give them more conversation, give them more an opportunity for greater input from each of the leagues to determine what would be a manageable amount for them. Otherwise, I do feel like we're springing additional fees on the parents, the leagues, everybody, and let the town kind of take this for the team.
Yeah, and I completely agree. Thanks for speaking up and saying that. I mean, that's, again, what I was prepared to do to start. these are new facts. I'm happy that people are discussing them. Thanks, Mr. Smith, for your comments, too, as a patron.
It may end up being that the fees are a lot higher, depending on what it takes to manage each of the porta potties and keeping them safe and clean. We may decide we want enclosures. In some places, we may need 2 ADA compliant instead of 1 and 1. So I think we should probably just hold off on asking the leagues to provide the fees, but then have that in the as a future plan or future potential.
How much money do we have in the, do we have sufficient funding in the parks field fee?
Sorry, I'll just say that we definitely have sufficient funding.
Okay.
I would add that you probably don't want to, for this fall, to provide one at Walker Farms because it's construction zone.
Right. Right. Please.
I agree. I agree that I think the town, certainly for the first year, and I think going forward should bear the burden of the cost, because we want these to be available for everybody, not just the people in the leagues. The Walker Farm one being a great point. There's no, I mean, yes, the East Bay Rowing uses that, but also kayakers, anybody going to fish, anybody going to do anything down there will have use of that. And so I don't think we should be in a position of, some people use it without a cost and some people have the cost. It's also, once spread out over the whole budget, I don't know that it's something that needs to be made up for on the parents of the youth sports that we all agree has a lot of value.
Okay, so does anyone want to make a motion?
So I have a question for discussion first, because I have a motion in mind, but I want to see what, maybe Phil or anybody else thinks about the amount. What I'd like to move for is, so I mentioned it was $20,000 under the calculations I provided, but do we need to build in a contingency for who knows what, for any kind of contingency?
I was going to suggest that you don't actually identify a specific amount, but if you identify the funding source, which I left a blank there, which would be the field maintenance fund, which is supplied with funding from our cell tower leases, that then we have the flexibility to figure out each. I don't know if you're going to be able to nail down an exact cost, especially if we're only talking about this calendar year, which is only a partial year, versus next year. So I think we'll have a better idea of the exact cost if you want to look at it again just after the start of the next calendar year.
Okay, thank you.
So I would just say, just identify since I put the blank there, say field maintenance fund, and it sounds like you wouldn't also suggest fees for, adding fees from the leagues, increasing the fees from the leagues as well, so it would just be for the field maintenance fund.
So in that case, if folks are ready, I can make a motion to approve town provision of portable ADA-compliant restroom facilities for athletic fields at locations determined by town administration with funding from the Field Maintenance Fund.
Made and seconded. For further discussion, can we clarify, there are shown 3 locations where they have 2, actually that's not, 2 at Chinese Field, for example, and if they're right next to each other, we could have 1 ADA compliant and 1 not. At Haynes Park, they're spread out, so those probably both need to be ADA. And if at the middle school they're right next to each other, we could do 1 and 1. But if we want to make them all ADA compliant for simplicity, we could do that too.
So one comment I have is, and I mentioned some comments before, I don't necessarily agree with the specific list that's here. So, for example, does the middle school need to go from 0 to 2, or are there locations where it could go and they could have 1, and then therefore another field can use 1? Does Chinese need 2, or do they just need 1? Because there is the permanent facility. Maybe it's open, maybe it's not, but if there's, that's in a very centralized location, whether you're playing soccer, football, lacrosse, baseball, somebody's playing tennis, pickleball, basketball at the playground. it's a pretty central location, so do they need to go from 0 to 2, for example? So I like the way that it was worded in our materials, at locations determined by town administration, because that allows the opportunity to continue to work with the sports leagues. And maybe it needs to even shift from season to season. I don't know. But if that's an option, then at least we'd have the option to do that.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Okay. Well, in that case, unless, Councilor Breyer, a motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Thanks, and thanks, Alan. Next item on the agenda is to discuss and act on the middle school safety improvement construction and maintenance agreement. And Phil, can you take us through this?
Sure. The state is preparing to bid out the middle school safety improvement project, which is the addition of the left turn lane for eastbound traffic on Lincoln Avenue at Middle Highway. And that includes lots of other improvements as well, including new signals, new crosswalks, new crossing signals for pedestrians, new sidewalks, some drainage, some trees and things like that. So it's this is required for them, and they're saying it's urgent, so that's a good sign because the state's paying for all this. And it's moving forward. But this is just a formality. This is just something that's required for this project to be bid out. And one thing that we do have a concern that we'd like to discuss with them is the inclusion of language about us maintaining the traffic signals and exact wording, but anything related to the traffic signals. That's normally maintained by the state on a state road. So Middle Highway being a state road, we'd like to have them strike that part of the agreement. But otherwise, it's generally okay. It's fine. But it's just that one small detail.
Okay. Questions on this? Any questions from the public? Please. Mr. Medlin, if you come forward, I'm going to get in trouble because I didn't ask people to come forward and identify themselves. So.
My name is Braxton Medlin. I live at 19 Commonwealth Avenue. I just had a question about the agreement. It still says the state of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations. Is that going to be?
We actually noticed that as well, so we'll flag that. It was a bit of a surprise as well, so we'll mention that as well. We'll have them strike that as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good catch.
You don't want to make an agreement with a state that doesn't exist.
That came from the state, by the way. We didn't draft it.
I know.
Okay.
And somebody's old form that they reused. Okay. Any further discussion? Does anyone want to make a motion to authorize the town to execute a construction and maintenance agreement with the Rhode Island Department of Transportation for the Barrington Middle School Safety Improvement Construction and Maintenance Agreement, subject to proposed changes and subject to approval by the town solicitor?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay. Next is our discussion of discuss and act on ARPA priorities and funding. Phil, can you take us through this, please?
The town has received from the American Rescue Plan Act $4,798,351.22. The town council has to date committed $2,850,000 or so, just to kind of give you a ballpark. Those projects are the wastewater treatment plant upgrades in East Providence, up to $1.6 million. A new website, which just launched at the beginning of July, $22,320, $10,000 to help offset the premium price of electric vehicle for the police department. We were the first police department in the state to get an electric vehicle for their fleet, for a police fleet. It was $10,000. the council award approved using up to $275,000 for the Walker Farm Resilience and Recreational Improvement Project, and also just awarded or authorized up to almost $42,000 for the public safety EV charging stations, at the public safety building. And those will be actually installed this week, starting tomorrow. So these projects are all moving forward. The construction of Walker Farm is going to be underway pretty soon. I'm not sure about the wastewater treatment plant status, but that's also an engineering phase, right, Alan? So we don't really know what the exact cost of that is yet. So the previous town manager appointed an ad hoc committee to provide recommendations for the utilization of any uncommitted funding. And it's been a while since they met, but the last meeting, I think it's the first meeting of this year, was just held on July 12th, and the committee didn't necessarily take, they didn't really take a vote on it, a formal vote, but they did indicate what would be the priority areas for funding, and that would included Haynes Park Phase 1, tennis court resurfacing. I'm sorry, the highest priority was cybersecurity and public safety, but other priority projects in the list include Haynes Park Phase 1, tennis court resurfacing, which includes the Kent Street courts, the Lincoln Avenue courts across from the high school, and the Chinese courts. Fixing a drainage issue at the senior center entrance, replacing the rooftop units at the library and PEC center, library/PEC center, sorry, and acquiring more electric vehicles for the town, and also adding more electric vehicle charging infrastructure.
Chief, I understand that the police department test drove a Ford Lightning pickup. Is that right?
Yes, we did.
How did you guys like it?
It was good. It was very well received. It's a little too quick for me, but it's impressive.
I confess I've been coveting that myself, so.
Somebody pointed out to me that you could also have a public safety issue. If somebody in need in a power outage, you can actually provide power to somebody's home on a temporary basis. So kind of an interesting vehicle moving forward.
Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt, Phil.
That's okay. So a couple other items that were on tonight's agenda includes committing up to $19,000 for the wayfinding signage project. Most of that is grant funded, a grant funded project plus some bond money, and also some IT networking equipment improvements at Town Hall, $10,175. There's been no decision made on either one of those, but they were on the agenda for later on. And in addition, the town is adding another project, which is zero trust cybersecurity measures through Envision under a state master price agreement. So those are they're all kind of related to cybersecurity issues, which were a priority of the ad hoc committee. Included in the ad hoc committee review was a consideration of all the comments that had been received through our town website, and so all that information led to the provision of that spreadsheet showing the potential projects. Which is an attachment.
So that was definitely, I think, the consensus of the ad hoc committee was public safety and cybersecurity issues. But those don't happen to be the big ticket items anyway. Well, the radios actually are fairly expensive, but one of the things that I sort of am questioning is some of these projects are also on school property. And for example, the Lincoln Avenue tennis courts, those are certainly used by the public in general. So I do think that we should be paying for those. But they're also used by the high school, and so I'd like to see if they would be willing to contribute some amount to it. If we were to approve this just as is, we'd actually be $11,000 over what we have, and that doesn't really include contingencies for anything. So that would be my suggestion, would be that as to locations that are shared use, school and municipality, that we postpone voting on those until we can get some input from the school committee as to whether they're willing to contribute some portion of that cost.
I do have, if you don't mind, some input from the schools on the Lincoln Avenue / high school tennis courses, that they would, I know it's not really out of the local budget, but they were offering the ride reimbursement for that. So that's what the 500,000 is includes 80, add 80 for the grant, and then you add the reimbursement, so that it's 580 plus that reimbursement. Which I didn't want to really calculate, but it doesn't, 500 plus 80 doesn't include all the costs. The cost could be around 700,000 plus for all these courses.
I'd like to see if they were willing to put a little bit more on the table.
Okay.
Especially since I think in order for us to get that reimbursement, we'd have to loan them the money to contribute to us, and then they could get the reimbursement, which they could contribute to us.
Okay.
So
something in writing.
So that's my suggestion. I don't know how people feel about putting off a decision on the joint school and a municipality property. Please,
I'd just
Councilor Bryan.
like to clarify whether we're approving these things to go forward and it's done, or we're approving earmarking the funds for that project. And so then there would be a future vote, specifically with Haynes Park. I know that we need more athletic fields, and, committing to that project in general, I'm supportive of, but before we say it's approved and go forward, I think we do need to do more community engagement, address some of the concerns raised, and make sure that, the whole community can be happy about the new field we create rather than it creating tension. So I just, wanted to clarify that.
Agreed. Please, Vice President Hum, I think you were.
Oh, thank you. So I had an even broader question than you, Mr. Carroll, is how critical is it that we vote on this entire list tonight? Is there a timing concern with respect to having a vote this summer as opposed to potentially at our next meeting?
Well, I did list 3 specific projects I'm hoping you would include in your motion. Those are important. They have to move sooner rather than later. Mm-hmm. Let's see, hang on a second. The radio communication console at the dispatch center, that needs to move forward sooner rather than later. That's a price, actually a discounted price. So I'd like to move forward on that. And the radios are not on my list there, but they are based on fire chief's pretty solid number there, so we can move forward with the bidding or getting the quotes for that and acquiring those for council approval at a future meeting. So same with the console, that would require council approval. The Genesi courts are really an important piece as well. This is more planning, like committing for moving forward with planning a lot of these things, including Genesi, which needs to move forward because there's a grant for turning part of those courts into a permanent pickleball facility, and that will require hiring a consultant to move forward with those designs. And Haynes Park will require a consultant that we'd have to hire them through with the council's approval, so we can get that public input and get feedback as these plans take, when they kind of take greater shape, like kind of, right now it's just kind of concept with, but you really need to get a professional on board for that. So, some of it's probably can kind of wait, but if it's more of a general vote that, yeah, these are priorities and we can move forward piecemeal here and there. I hear you about certain things, but we'd like to move forward with some of these things sooner rather than later.
No, thank you, and I definitely appreciate that. I'm all for efficiency and moving things forward quicker if we can. One additional reason I have the question is just, I don't know if any of us up here are experts on ARPA. I assume you and Teresa probably are the resident experts here in terms of, what the different funding categories are, what's in compliance, what isn't in compliance. One thing that struck me is, do all these things, how confident are these that all these things would comply with ARPA? Because I know that the municipalities need to submit, compliance lists. So by voting, today, are we running risk of, any of these things being closed on the fence? So I think it's more just kind of understanding better and having the full transparency on that.
Basically, it's unrestricted, but there are certain things that you can't pay toward a pension or things like that. But I think
there were
these
initially certain things that were restricted. There was some portion that was restricted and then unrestricted. The portion that was restricted, we used most of that for the wastewater plant, which was one of those things that was explicit in the bill, not sort of generally, but they talked about water and sewer. But I want to get back to Councilor Breyer's question, and I don't think, so we're not, we wouldn't be approving a contract. So I think you were right when you said this is more like earmarking, and then we come back and there'd be bids presented for whatever the work is ultimately at Haynes Park that would come back before the town council, having gone through community, gotten community input, and then ultimately the council would say, we're picking the Acme company to do this plan. Is that fair to say, Phil?
Yes.
Okay. Please.
So President Carroll and I both served on the ad hoc committee with the town manager and the previous town manager, and then a number of other community members. And I believe that when we looked at every element, because it really did start with this wide funnel of opportunities, and the mission and the purpose of the ARPA funding is for infrastructure, improved technology, safety, which is where the wastewater comes in, the cybersecurity, the town website, and all the other pieces. I know President Carroll mentioned the schools and wanting to split with the schools. I fully agree with that. I was a little reluctant to do anything that didn't directly benefit the safety and security and infrastructure of the town, specifically cybersecurity, climate mitigation, communications for our public safety services. So things like, and I think we all sort of had a sticker shock when we saw the tennis courts and the beach structure and all of those things that seemed very expensive for the purpose of this project. So going back to the earmark, though, this money does need to be spent within a certain time frame because this was the ARPA funding. So we do need to move forward if we do earmark these different projects because, one, we know that there's a long runway for many projects, especially infrastructure, because everybody else has the same restrictions and everyone else has the same funding needs. But if I may, I would suggest that we go ahead and improve some of the areas that I believe are truly the priorities, and I heard strongly from the rest of the committee that they were priorities in terms of the cybersecurity. One, the reason why I think cybersecurity is so critical here is because not only does it protect the town, but it protects our residents. So if we are at risk of cybersecurity and your information is vulnerable, you're the ones who have to deal with that as opposed to the town. We can have our insurance for ransom and a number of different things, but if it's your social security number that's exposed, you're the one who has to deal with all the credit risks. So I think those are the critical pieces. I also felt like we had a number of items on here that didn't have price tags attached, and I want to make sure that we have some solid estimates on what those things would cost. We did get those.
Oh, do you have any questions about anything in particular?
It was, when we initially had talked about, I think it was Police Cove Park, we talked about expanding it and the fence, but then there was some additional, the seawall reconstruction. Is that $200,000?
That's not a solid number.
That's not a solid number.
No.
And that's where I get nervous about throwing a lot of different things in, like tennis court resurfacing for $500,000. That's, I'm not saying tennis courts aren't important. I'm saying I want to make sure our seawall is reinforced before we move forward with making anybody. We can't expand another splash pad if we're all under 4 feet of water. So let's make sure we have some good numbers there. So that's where I go back, is just to say I would feel comfortable approving the earmarks for those items that, again, it's my own definition of critical, but that I would see as more critical to the public safety and community resources for the town, and then holding back on some of those other bigger ticket items, like the shade structure at the beach, like resurfacing the tennis courts, and looking at Haynes Park in a way that is not committing to moving forward with the project, but going as far as we need to get the information we do, since we do have the resources and we do have the funding, but pumping the brakes a little bit on some of the other nice-to-haves, like the shade structure or anything that falls with the school.
And I think you mentioned this, Councilor Conway, at the outset, but just to reiterate, there are deadlines involved here. We need to actually have spent the money by a certain date, or we lose the money. So what is that? That's
We just verified that. It's December 31st, 2024 is the deadline for obligating the money, and then spending it completely is at the end of 2026.
okay.
So I guess that, in summary, that gives us time to think about how we earmark it, but we do have deadlines that are coming. So for the bigger projects, we may want to allocate and spend those funds while we have it, and then determine what our other priorities may be.
So looking at the list, it seems the items that were shaded in green, 10, 11, 12, and 13, would be those that don't fit into that critical section that Councilor Conway is describing. Are there others that you would say don't fit in the first section, all above the in the what's the heading?
And those were shaded for that exact reason, right?
I think they're shaded. They're part of the Parks and Rec
right.
recommendation.
So then I think it's 22, 21.
Oh, yeah. Although
26, 27, 28.
I know it's not infrastructure, but repairs to a playground and making it ADA compliant.
20 is included. 22, 20. Oh, those are backwards. 22 and 21 are those that are shaded. 20 is the ADA accessibility, those surfaces.
That was not shaded.
That was not shaded.
But there's also the ADA swings.
Right,
Which
22 is shaded, but also includes ADA and repairs to the playground.
And I appreciate our chairman of our Parks and Rec going back with a sharp pencil on the swing, because they varied wildly. You could spend $100,000 on a swing. These are swings that you can put a wheelchair in. and then just close it up, and within the wheelchair, the person could swing. I think there were some for $100,000, but I believe our chair has managed to find us one for $15,000 I think if we put it together. So I'm going to ask, I think Alan's people could do that great. So I would agree that the ADA swing, although it's shaded, so it's not a high priority in terms of infrastructure and security, it's kind of long overdue. But Vice President Hum, how do you feel about what we should be voting on and how much we should be voting on?
I'd be comfortable moving forward.
Okay.
May I ask another question? Line 30 has no funding amount to it, and that's the part of the complete street plan.
Right.
And yes, there's a large, is the bond balance going to cover that full amount?
Right. We were able to get the bond balance of over $4 million, so
Right.
we're putting
And that
that
will
toward
cover?
Well, it covers higher priorities. It doesn't cover everything, but it covers a significant amount of the work that we have to get done.
That's something I think I would want to make sure that we at least know what that complete streets plan is before we spend the other, or earmark the other funds that may be needed for the remainder of that project. I don't know that 4 million will cover it all, I guess is what I'm saying. It may, I just don't know that it will.
I think we need a lot more than 4 million to get all the sidewalks
Right,
we need
right,
in town.
Right, and that's where this is where the conversations around like resurfacing tennis courts versus providing sidewalks for the town, that's, to me, that's a hard, even an ADA compliant swing, I struggle with some of the Parks and Rec priorities, just because if we are looking at the complete streets plan and we know that's going to be, let's say, just $6 million and we have $4 million from the bond balance, we still need 2. Well, we're going to have to go through a lot of different things to get back to 2.
I think the time frame for by the point you understand how much more you need, it's going to be so far down. It might be a problem with the 2024 obligation deadline at that point.
That's fair.
So this is my suggestion. We approve to use Councilor Breyer's language, the earmarks, the funding for this without specifically approving the bids for some of them tonight, and then come back in September for either some more or the remainder if we have more information. And I'm going to suggest these items. If you're looking at the list over on the left, 6, cybersecurity, 7, fiber optic upgrade, 7A, upgrade to IT closet, 8, 800 megahertz radios for public safety, 9, SIGCOM radio consoles for dispatch center, 14, fixed drainage problem at senior center access ramp, which is really a safety issue. 18, Police Cove seawall reconstruction. I'm going to suggest wayfinding signs 19A because we've been talking about them for a long time, and they're relatively small in price. 20 and 22, playgrounds and Kid Cove playground, both of those are ADA. And then 23, which is the Police Cove fence. That's an issue because we're a victim of the success of the splash pad. There are a lot of kids there, and there's a concern about the safety of the kids running around there. So that's really more of a that's for safety reasons, isn't it, Phil?
It is, and if this is like flexible in the number, because it kind of gives you like a ballpark, but it could be higher than that. Just if that motion includes, it gives you direction, but it doesn't really have these amounts are just planning amounts, but it could be higher than that. But we'll find out when we get the pricing, come back to the council for the actual quote bid approval.
I support those, but then would ask that we add 16 and potentially 15 to it. So 16 is fixing the erosion at Latham Park and Allen's Cove,
Yep.
and 15 is electrifying the town fleet.
Yeah. Any thoughts? Councilor Breyer?
I was going to second your motion, but I'd like to second Councillor Conway's addition to your motion, if that's
Okay.
possible.
A motion has been made to include, Mary, did you get what I was saying? And then add 15 and 16?
Yes.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Please, Kathy.
But you are going to approve any contracts?
That's right.
I do have a contract for Zero Trust. It's on the state of PA. And I have one for the switches for TNS. And Town Solicitor has approved that contract. After you vote on that, can you also vote to allow the town manager to sign the contracts? So we can get underway with Zero Trust and the switches in the closet?
Zero Trust is the cybersecurity, and TNS is the upgrade to the IT closet. Okay. Those are on here because we were going to discuss on them, so we'll be taking both the earmarking and then as a next step, we can approve those proposals. So any further discussion? Okay, motion made and seconded.
President Carroll?
Yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to explain the courts again a little bit. We don't have the funding to be able to move forward with the courts. We included all of the courts because that's get the most bang for your buck. We have to be able to move forward with the Genesi courts just because we have the grant and there's expectation that we get the pickleball project built, and so if there's any way to carve off that so we can move forward sooner rather than later on at least Genesi.
So I just did some calculator math as named by my colleague, Councillor Hum. And if we were to earmark all of those items, it's about $881,000. Added to the committed funding, that's about 3,730 out of the almost 5 million, which would leave us $1,060,000 remaining. Which, depending on what happens with the community input for Haynes for $1 million, and not knowing that all of these are solid numbers, that's just a point of information, that we're getting very close to what our total to spend is.
I do think, though, that one of the things that we like to do is leverage our payment with grants, and the pickleball courts do that, and those are not connected with the schools. That's just at Genesi. What item is that? I've lost track of it.
It's
11.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, but they are connected in this sense. Do you know how much the funding for the Genesi courts are?
Alan, can you help me make a guess at that? I think it's about 250. Is that a fair?
There's still some outstanding questions on the Shinesi courts if we're going to do a full reconstruction. It's definitely converting the street hockey into pickleball, but also refurbishing the one tennis court and the basketball court. So it's still unknown. I think we went on the high end just in case we had to do some, corrections over there with the tennis courts. The nets are actually bending in a little bit and straighten everything out. So I think that's why we went on that side of caution.
So I'd like to wait until September for that, until we get a little closer to, that rough cost. Okay, so we have a motion made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is to discuss and act on the policy for community event fund for community events. And our town manager, Phil Hervey, will give us this one.
So the council previously had waived the police detail fees for a couple of events from last year, and that led to the question of what's the policy for considering that kind of request. And I think that led to the inclusion of $3,000 in the budget for community events, which is not technically under the council part of the budget, but it is hasn't really been formulated as far as how to consider requests for that funding. If it's done administratively, I probably already have enough requests to approve $3,000. But it seems like for a sense of transparency, there should be an ability to consider multiple requests, almost like a Spencer Trust kind of process, and have these organizers of these events make their case and also advertise their own event, or that kind of thing. And I kind of struggle with a request I had. It's like it would take up more than half the amount of money in one fell swoop, and and then I asked, could it be matched by that organization? It seemed like that's a possibility. So I don't know. I'm just trying to get some direction on how to consider these requests. What are you looking for? $3,000 doesn't go that far, but it can help quite a bit with some of these smaller events. So I was just looking for some feedback on how we should process this.
One thought is the Councilor Costell's suggestion for the flags. We have a funding meeting once a year, and we kind of make it well known to everyone. This is when we will decide on these amounts, this $3,000. So if someone is suggesting a film forward type thing or a street fair, everyone knows that we're going to do it on this date, so they come forward and we have an opportunity. I think it sounds like your concern is that you could eliminate that fund right now, and then somebody comes forward next month with a really worthy, and there's zero left, rather than trying to spread that out.
You're closing the door on some event that might be planned in the spring, and it's just hard to say.
Right. Thoughts on the council for this? What about a kind of fund meeting once a year at a set time? We'll try to give plenty of notice, put it out on social media and so forth. So and reach out to the folks who've already done this kind of thing. The Film Forward people and Mariana Silva Buck did the program at Police Cove last year. The street fair, which was a great success. And try to get those folks involved. I'm sure they'll be interested. Does that make sense? Please, Vice President.
Thank you. I mean, something like that does make sense. One thing I wrestle with is, whether we need an actual policy for it, or if it can, items can come before the council as they come up. They don't come up all that often. One feature to me that sticks out is that it needs to be open to everybody in the community and exclusive of nobody. I think that's, just in my own mind, something that's critical. But outside of that, it really might be event specific. We don't know what the costs are. We don't know what the setup, and a whole bunch of other factors related to, specific events that we can't predict today. And we haven't gotten many of these requests. It's just something that's come up recently. So how significant of an issue is it, especially if the council is going to be reviewing it in the public and talking about it in the public so people have an opportunity to weigh in? That does provide transparency. It provides people an opportunity to make a request, get feedback, either approved or denied. So those are my thoughts.
So you're suggesting that we just handle them as they come up?
Yeah, that's where I'm sitting right now. I'm open to further discussion completely. But I have the only overarching characteristic is the one that I mentioned. But otherwise, I don't feel strongly about any other elements or anything like that.
Councilor Breyer.
I think to Vice President Hum's point, that looking at each event kind of on its own is a good way to approach it. I think having been in a position to plan community events over a couple decades, there's little chance that somebody planning a first event would have any idea that they could have this opportunity. And those are the events that are probably most in need of the support because they don't have revenue sources, they don't have funding to get started. Also, to do it once a year with $3,000, we could be presented with 30 really great events that we want to support and not be able to do it. But if we take them as they come, we also have the council contingency fund. We have other potential sources where we could support an event, or maybe we can't offset a cost, but we have, another idea comes up on how to support it. So I think, a policy of request the council support the event, whether it's offsetting police detail or access to facilities, something like that, I think would be a good approach.
I think we need to have the flexibility, and I worry that if it was just once a year, there might be an event that's planned immediate. It could be in reaction to something that happens on a national level, and someone plans an event that needs to take place over the next week, and they need police detail, and they didn't know it was going to happen a month ago versus a year ago. I think the other question that I have is $3,000 seems like it's probably not enough. And to Councilor Breyer's point, if we can approve each one as they come, we can identify if it is enough or not, or if we want to go beyond that, depending on what the requests are. So I would support a sort of a one-off approval basis, and we could have some framework or guardrails around the policy, but I think overall, just hearing as people come up. Right. And as Councilor Breyer said, the people who need it the most probably don't even know that it exists.
Yeah. Please,
Thanks. I just want one other thing, and it's not completely relevant to or specific to what we're talking about, but thanks to everybody who has, run, sponsored, attended one of these community events. The street fair folks went to that the Barrington Business Association just ran. I don't know if people went, but that was an amazing, amazing turnout there on a hot day. I think those community building type events are just so important, especially coming out of the COVID situation that we've been in for so long, and people are tired of it and are, I think, happy to kind of be out and about and see things, see people. So I just want to put that out there, and I'm really happy to see a lot of these things going on.
I think this is a short-term problem, but the problem is the one that Phil mentioned, and that's that it'd be very easy to spend it at the beginning of the year, and we have no idea what's coming at the end of the year. I think at a certain point, as there are spring events or things like that, even if we don't have any money left, we'll at least know next year maybe this event is coming again, that kind of thing. I would also, I have some concerns about, the guardrails on this, as you said, Councilor Conway, because, I don't want some odd group that we don't know anything about to come in and demand the money, and then us have some obligation to provide it if we haven't set any kind of guardrails on it. So we don't have to decide that, but let's think about that. But I guess the second question is, however we do it, and it sounds like the consensus is as it comes up, should it be the council or the town manager who does it? And my belief is it should probably be the council to do it, because then it's out in public, transparent, as you said. Do we need to vote on that, Amy? We're not really deciding on any money, so.
I think if you're not taking any action, you don't need a vote. But if you want to vote, you can direct the town manager to formulate a policy for the council's consideration in consultation with the solicitor's office.
Sounds good. So moved.
Second.
Well, wait a minute. So the motion would be to create a policy, however? And would the policy be to, just for the town manager to put these types of proposals in front of the council?
Well, I think there are two questions. One is putting them in front of the council, and then the other is, I'd just like to have an opinion from our solicitor on whether we'd somehow be obligated to, provide funding for, the Haters of America group or something. I can't think of one, but some really offensive group that said, we're running a public event.
So in other words, like a research and an opinion on
yes,
whether it needs a policy or not. Is that a fair way to put it?
Yeah, so that's how I would put it, is like an evaluation of whether a policy needs to be in place. So I make a motion that we direct the town manager to present to the council applications that come in for funding from this fund, and the solicitor to provide an evaluation of the need for a policy. Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Now, I skipped Kathy, so I'm coming back to it. This was to approve two contracts. The first is the contract for the cybersecurity, which is, what is the name of that group, Kathy? Envision. Yes, I've got it here. So the first one is Envision, right?
Yeah, Envision Technology will configure and deploy the Zero Trust. And then we've also put into that a monthly maintenance cost, so they'll continually monitor it. And we have to upgrade some of the Microsoft Office licenses that we have. So if we take the total cost, we also have a grant for $48,900. So it's just under $36,000, but we're requesting up to $40,000 from opera funds, just so we don't have to come back if there's a little thing missing.
Okay, and this did not need to go through the bidding process because it's on the
State MPA.
Okay.
And the town solicitor has approved the contract.
Okay. Any questions for Kathy on this one? I'll make a motion to approve the contract in the amount of up to $40,000 for Zero Trust cybersecurity measures through Envision under the state MPA. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
or it's approving the use of up to $40,000 of ARPA money. The actual project's almost 90,000, is it 86,000?
It's approximately $84,850, but then if we subtract the grant of $49,900, that's where the $35,950 comes from, just under 36. So that's why we requested the $40,000 from ARPA.
Okay, so did I not say from ARPA?
It's just that this is under the ARPA agenda item. It's not,
Yeah.
that's only, there's no special agenda item just for that contract, so.
No, but I think Amy said because we're discuss an act on this, and it is spelled out specifically in the papers that were filed, we're okay with approving this contract. Yeah. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Next item is the quote from TNS. And what is that for, Kathy?
That's for the switches in the closet in the tax assessor's office. That'll be all completely redone. It's under the bid amount, so we do not have to go to bid for it. It'll be done by a current contracted computer people.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to approve up to $10,175 for upgrades to the town's networking equipment through TNS. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is to discuss and act on a flag policy and schedule. I will note that there have been some discussion about the shirtlift decision. That's a United States Supreme Court decision that came down involving the city of Boston that had actually I think it's probably fair to say they didn't really have a policy. They had what they called an unwritten policy about flags, and in that they refused to allow one group led by Mr. Shirtlift to fly their flag. Mr. Shirtlift sued, and the Supreme Court held that this was public speech, not government speech, and therefore there was an obligation for the city of Boston to approve it because there was a First Amendment right once you made it public speech. So as we look at our policy, I think it's, in my opinion, is quite easily distinguishable. We actually say in our policy, it's a written policy for one thing. It says that this is government speech. That couldn't be clearer. And as to the other factors in Shirtlift, we have had a history of evaluating, having things come before the council for evaluation. So I think Shirtlift is distinguishable, but I think before we talk about any kind of scheduling of flags, we have to see what the appetite for the council is to continue flying flags other than the American flag and the state flag. Would anyone from the public like to be heard on this? Anyone on the council?
I would just add, I think our policy is separate and distinctly different. And one thing that I think varied between the written policy and the implementation that makes it even more solidly different from Boston is to stick with the methods in the policy for raising a temporary flag, which did not include the approval of applications or the denial of applications, but simply a resolution presented by a council member or an action taken by the town manager. And if members of the public have a cause or an issue that they want highlighted, they can speak with a member of the council or a town manager and discuss it. And if it's the determination of that person that raising a flag is a good way to acknowledge that group or recognize that cause, they can then present the resolution to the whole council for it to be discussed in public. And so we haven't received any applications, I think, in just over a year. So I think if we just stick with what's in the policy and discontinue having even an application exist, I think it would be a good way to move forward.
I have a question about sort of I understand that the shirt lift decision doesn't seem to be a direct application to our policy. But I wonder, from the town solicitor, if the Supreme Court has made a number of decisions that seem to be outside of the walls of what they should be making decisions on. And they have, if we were faced with a similar situation, if we had someone who wanted to have a flag raised that we did not want to have raised and they went ahead and sued the town, would that, I mean, we learned today that a 6-year-old could sue the library, so we know that someone could put forth a suit. What would the potential obligations be? What would I should say it differently, what would the potential outcomes be if we were sued by a member of the community who wanted to have a flag, now that we've had precedent set with this case going to the Supreme Court?
Our office did provide a privileged memo to the council regarding this very issue, so I don't feel comfortable talking about specifics. However, in general, in response to your questions, I feel comfortable saying I think the trend that we've seen from the Supreme Court is pro-First Amendment, and I think, anytime you establish some kind of supposed or claimed public forum, there's a risk of a First Amendment claim, and it's also difficult to predict with certainty because these inquiries are so fact-intensive. Right. So I don't have an easy answer to that question. I think it's something that we would discuss most likely in executive session in advance of any claim.
And the reason I bring this up is because in my mind, this flag was not a flag that was a community-based flag. It was a strictly religious flag, which in my mind would be most straightforward of a decision of whether or not a religious flag flies on a state building or a government building. And knowing that, I have some concerns that we would put ourselves in a difficult position. Now, I understand that our exposure is maybe privileged or case by case, but I would just be really careful in terms of what we're looking at and supporting what we've done to make sure that we're protecting ourselves as well, so that we don't find ourselves in a position where we're flying a Patriot Front flag or some sort of thing.
That's certainly a fair point, and one thing that I have always told my clients is, can't tell you if you're going to get sued. It's really easy to sue someone. All it takes is a filing fee and a piece of paper. That doesn't mean you'll win, but it does mean that you're in a lawsuit. So that could certainly happen. And so the question becomes, is it a fight worth having? Now, it's really a symbolic thing, but in my mind, it's become more important. When it initially happened, when our manager initially raised the Black Lives Matter flag, I thought, that's great, but it's just symbolic. Let's get to the real work. We're going to make sure that our police department has all the right policies, and they did, and we're going to do what we can to improve our hiring policies and our housing. Those are the real meat of it. And I don't want to say I was dismissive, but I just thought it was less important. But it has raised such discussion, and I have heard certainly opposition to it, but I've also heard a lot of support from people who believe that flying certain flags makes them feel like a part of the community. So that's sort of the question. In terms of, what it really comes down to, and I have the case here, It says, "The first and most basic question we must answer is whether Boston's flag-raising program constitutes government speech. If so, Boston may refuse flags based on viewpoint." So they really spell out exactly what they're saying. Now, could they extend that? Yeah. But as I read the decision, all the things Boston wasn't doing, we are doing. So we try to make it very clear to everyone that this is government speech, and it's not private expression. So I would like us to continue flying these flags, even though they're symbolic. They're an important symbol that says some things to important communities within our community, and also is welcoming of people outside our community. So I think that the question is whether we would approve flying flags, and we can have more discussion about this, but I'll make a motion that we approve flying this list. I want to change the first suggested one is Black Lives Matter flag. I want to go with Councilor Breyer suggested and I think had made a Barrington Believes Black Lives Matter flag for February. Autism awareness for April. The Armenian flag for April 24. The Pride flag for June of 22. The flag thanking our first responders in September. And breast cancer awareness in October. Yes, Phil.
President Carroll, I just want to point out these are the dates that were approved last year, so they would have to be, I'm not sure what the date for 2020.
I think it's the same, oh yeah, I'm not sure about Armenian.
Yeah, that one, right.
But
Yeah. It's always the 24th.
It's always the 24th.
Oh, it's always the 24th, I'm sorry.
So all of those would be for 2023.
Gotcha.
Just one additional note that I hesitate to bring up, but I do want to point out, because as a general rule on a matter like this, this council couldn't bind the actions of the newly elected council. The new council can reconsider this decision if it chooses.
Sure.
But these flags all, oh, I see. Apologies.
So it would be, sorry, let me rejigger that because we would be talking about the flag thanking first responders for 2022 and breast cancer awareness for September of 2022 for the first responders, and the breast cancer awareness for October of 2022 because those haven't come yet. And then the other flags would be for 2023.
So you could choose to just vote on the flags that will be flown while this council is constituted and leave it to the next council to approve flag raisings during their term.
I've been very public. Flags are not my thing, so I'll say this brief and then hopefully we can go vote. I think we should just vote on the list tonight. And if the new council wants to revisit it, the new council can revisit it. But the purpose of having this meeting in July is to have one meeting a year on the flags, and now that would open us up to additional meetings. So I'd recommend that we make a vote now, and if the new council wants to change it, the new council can change it.
Okay. So I'm going to make this motion one more time. Make a motion that we approve flying the flag thanking first responders in September and for the month of September 2022, flag recognizing breast cancer awareness for October of 2022, the flag saying that Barrington Believes Black Lives Matter for February of '23, Autism Awareness for April of '23, Armenian flag for April 24, 2023, and the Pride flag for June of 2023. Is there a second?
I'll second, but also have a few comments about it. I think I support recognizing each of these months, and I'm okay doing it with a flag. I think going forward, the town should look for ways to choose what periods of time, what groups, what causes to recognize, and maybe leverage the DEI committee to advise on how best to do so. I think in many cases, a flag is not the best way, even for the symbol. And in some cases, it is. For example, the Pride flag is something that's done worldwide during June. Autism Awareness Month, worldwide, buildings are lit up in blue. Raising a flag has the same effect, but it's not kind of joining that same worldwide event. And I think we should put in the intention, we should put the intention behind how best to be part of these various movements and supportive of these groups. So I support voting now to raise these flags, but would like to see going forward ways to put some more intention behind it. And I know having meetings throughout the year discussing different issues can create tension, but I think it's important because the people recognized by these groups aren't recognized one day a year. They're valued and important 365 days a year.
Okay. Anything else? So it's made and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries.
I just want clarification. So you removed flag thanking the first responders for September 23 and breast cancer October 23. You're waiting for that?
Those are 2020. They're not for 2023.
That's right.
They're for 2022.
That's right. And you're not putting it on there for 2023. You're just leaving it for 2022 so that the next town council can, yep. I just want to make sure I have it right.
Yes. Okay. Great. Next item on the agenda is to discuss and act on the proposal of a green memo format for bid memos. This was to obtain a more environmentally friendly option. This was initially Councilor Breyer's, and then it was referred to town manager, solicitor, and resilience. Councilor Breyer, if you want to just kind of summarize what it was to start.
So the overall goal is to document what the town is doing in terms of procurement to make environmentally friendly decisions, whether it's purchasing equipment or services where relevant, where there may or may not be green alternatives. If we are making the green purchase and it costs more, is it valuable to be doing so? And if we're not, are there green alternatives that were maybe either out of our price range or just not, wouldn't deliver the quality that we need? I think as this has kind of gone back and forth with referrals and input from the solicitor's office, I think it's become more robust than the initial goal. And so I do agree with, and I met with the town manager this morning and we spoke about it a bit. I agree that referring the procurement ordinance that was drafted by the solicitor's office to the Resilience and Energy Committee is a good step in terms of determining how it fits into our overall climate action plan. But I think something we can do as an interim step is to ask the town manager to come up with a way to just document what thought and what's going into the purchase decisions now. So the DPW directors note that a lot of times there just isn't the staff time to research this. I think it's important that we have that documented. So, one line on the bid request is there a green alternative? Yes, but we didn't have the ability to research it at this time. That's important for us to know, so as we evaluate staffing needs in the future, we know that if we want to be able to make wise green purchases in the future, we need maybe another half FTE or something, helping with our procurement in that area. So, I'm curious what others' thoughts are, but I think moving forward with referral for advice from R&E is good, but taking an interim step and, however that works out on the memo itself, I think we can leave to the town manager. But I think it's just important to get that documentation in place.
My own view is that our town manager has already, our Resilience and Energy has presented us with a resilient Barrington resolution. Our town manager has distributed that to the department heads. We know that the department heads are looking at it. Chief and his officers drove a fully electric vehicle. I know that Alan Corvey is looking at a fully electric truck and has evaluated the current status of fully electric mowers and things like that. And the answer to the second question is we're not there yet. The deck isn't big enough, but it's coming. They're keeping an eye on those things. I think for us, it's policy, and we've set the policy, and we're seeing that policy being taken into account by the various departments. I'd rather not ask them to report back to us on that. We're getting reports, already every month, and in those reports they can put things. I don't want to take up their time because I think it's more complicated. In principle, this sounds good, but what's a greener alternative? Is it one that is from a company that's closer, so the truck needs to get here closer, faster, or is it, we shouldn't buy things from overseas because those require more energy? That kind of stuff can be debated a lot. And I'd rather not have them do that. I think I'd rather have them say, okay, there's an electric vehicle available, like to get that. That'll help us be greener. There's other equipment we can get. These are steps we can take. And I just don't want them to get into which paper distributor they should go with or any of those things. So that's my opinion. So I would support having the Resilience and Energy Committee address the issue in the development of an overall climate action plan, but I don't think we want to have the individual department heads responsible for making those evaluations, because I think it would take up too much of their time. Anyone else?
I guess one point to that, if I may. You pointed out we already have the policy. It was distributed to the department heads. They're already doing it. So this wouldn't be asking them to do anything else except write down sort of a sentence about their decision making. We know that it's happening, but the public doesn't necessarily know it's happening. But this would create more transparency into the purchase decision making process.
Yeah, I don't think it's a question of transparency. I mean, it's perfectly transparent. I mean, we decide on purchases in a public hearing after noticing it. It's just a question of whether we're going to ask them to lay out their thought process and do an evaluation. And I mean, they could present us with a sentence, but they do that every month with reports. We'd just be adding to that. That's just why I'm opposed. If nobody else has it, we could handle them as two separate motions. Would that make sense?
Sure.
Okay, do you want to make the first motion?
Motion to refer the draft Green Purchasing and Procurement Ordinance to the Resilience and Energy Committee for recommendations on how to address the issue in the development of a climate action plan.
I'll second that. Is there any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Now, did you want to make the other motion?
I don't.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is to discuss and act on the DEI committee's request that the town council recognize Juneteenth as a town holiday. We have the chair of our DEI committee here, Braxton Medlin, and if you wouldn't mind, sir, giving us kind of the thoughts of the DEI committee.
Thank you, President Carroll. Thank you, all council members. I want to especially thank Councilor Breyer and Councilor Conway for attending 95% of our meetings that we've had over the past. I can't believe it's almost been a year. My name is Braxton Medlin. I am the chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. And we, as a committee, had spoken, I believe a couple months ago, about a similar list, like with the flags, about things that we would like to discuss or see amplified throughout the year. And one of the things that we discussed was Juneteenth. For the people who are currently unaware of what Juneteenth is, what I'm even talking about, Juneteenth refers to June 19th, 1865, which is 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. That is when soldiers in Texas who were in the Confederate Army were apprised that they were indeed free. They were emancipated. They were no longer enslaved persons. It is a federal holiday as of June 2021, and it's the first new federal holiday since MLK Junior Day in 1983. There are 21 states who recognize it as a paid holiday, and like I stated before, it celebrates the emancipation of formerly enslaved people. I celebrated it as a child in Buffalo, New York. I remember going to Juneteenth celebrations, and it's something that I would love to see done here in Barrington. I would love to have it recognized so that people can take the day to reflect, just like we take Memorial Day, just like we take Labor Day. We take that day, we reflect. Some of us are able to do community organizing or other different projects, and I would love for the town of Barrington to be able to do that. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I hope that I can look forward to celebrating Juneteenth with you all next year. Thank you.
Thank you. We also asked our Director of Human Resources, Marianne Oliveira, to look through the contracts that we currently have with our unions, and she's provided an analysis of that, which is just that we would need to provide a holiday for police and dispatch and for fire as well. DPW already takes Juneteenth as a paid holiday if it falls on a weekday. So the other piece of that kind of works out, the timing is nice, that there will be costs if we choose to do this, but those will be in the next fiscal year, and that'll be decided on at the May financial town meeting. So we'll have the opportunity, if we decide to recognize this, to build it in, right?
No, because it would fall into this fiscal year.
Oh, that's right. You're right. We would vote on.
Right. We
That's right,
vote
because it's
May
June.
for next year's budget.
Sorry. That's right. So we would have to find that money. We haven't done an analysis, but did you have something to say on this?
Just discussion. As a federal holiday,
Juneteenth in my, I was shocked, I said that grammatically incorrectly. I am not the federal holiday. I am shocked that Juneteenth is not recognized as an automatic holiday, given that it is a federal holiday. And I think not only should we don't even really need to have discussion on it as far as I'm concerned, because we should be recognizing our federal holidays. But also I think we should put some pressure on our state legislators to get this passed to have the state recognize it. I know that when it was declared, when Juneteenth was declared a federal holiday last June, I believe it was the Saturday or the Friday before the holiday. In my professional life, we scrambled to make sure that everybody had the appropriate way to celebrate it and to be able to take the time off, and which day did they get, and we updated all the policies, and we did that within 24 or 48 hours. I'm sort of surprised that the state hasn't recognized it, and I think it's a wonderful opportunity to celebrate and learn our history, and again, I'm just surprised that it's a federal holiday. We need to have a vote as a town to recognize it. So that's where I stand on the vote.
Okay. Councilor Bryan?
I agree. I was surprised to learn that it's not a Rhode Island holiday. I thought, federal holiday sort of by default makes it a holiday in the country. I think I agree it should be a town holiday, and we should put pressure on the state to make it a state holiday as well.
So mechanically, the way we would do this is we would need to have our solicitor prepare an ordinance which could be introduced at our next meeting in September. And then in October, we would be able to have a public hearing on that to decide this. So would anyone like to be heard on this? Okay. So I'll make a motion to direct the town solicitor to prepare an ordinance for introduction at the September 12 council meeting that would recognize Juneteenth as a town holiday in Barrington.
Second.
And does the council also want to direct the solicitor to prepare a resolution urging the General Assembly to recognize Juneteenth as a state holiday? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, please add that to my motion.
Seconded as amended.
Seconded as amended. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Okay, the next item on our agenda is regarding gas stations. We have one gas station in town. I guess at one point we had three. Texera is on Maple Avenue. So we have one gas station left in town. The BP has closed up. I don't know when that project's going to go forward. But a constituent came to me and suggested that we not have additional gas stations. It can be kind of environmentally, it's future problems. It's a lot to clean them up once you decommission them. And the hope is that we're moving away from gasoline internal combustion engines to electric vehicles. And we still have one in town. And we're not such a big town that it's hard to go to the next town over. So those were kind of my thinking on this. And mechanically, the way we could do this is to ask our planning board to consider this. That would be sort of the first step, and then we'd go through that ordinance process again. Any thoughts on this? Okay. I'll make a motion to refer the question of amending the zoning ordinance to ban gas stations to the planning board for a recommendation. Is there a second?
Second.
If I can just amend that motion to say new gas stations.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
I just want to clarify, the ordinance amendment itself won't say new gas stations, but it will be effective upon passage if it's passed. And so normally, non-conforming uses are given legal protection. We did look into this issue, the question of whether any existing gas stations in town would be effective. if a gas station hasn't been operating and has had the pumps or tanks removed, I would consider that to equate to an abandoned non-conforming use. So I just want to clarify that. What you'll see will just say gas stations.
But new gas stations, right? Because we do have one existing gas station in town, and we're not kicking them out at the moment.
Right.
That's right, but that wouldn't say that in the ordinance because they'd be a pre-existing non-conforming use.
Okay.
So they'd be, the colloquial term is grandfathered in.
Okay. Yes, understood, but I'm just thinking what's more clear.
Yeah,
But in any event.
Yes, for our fourth estate here, this would refer to new gas stations. So I will amend the motion to say, to ban new gas station to the planning board for recommendation. Is there a second of that?
Second.
Further discussion? Yes.
So I worry about two things. One is just the general unfriendliness to business, potentially opening the door to banning other types of businesses that a future council may not want in town. And the other being the elimination or the protection of there being no competition for the one existing gas station in town. Prices fluctuate all the time. It's very easy if you don't have any competition to just add a couple cents to the gallon, and all of a sudden Barrington residents are paying a lot more for gas than they need to. So I don't support this and just wanted to share why.
Okay. Anything from the public? Okay.
The only thing I'd say, just for clarification, it's just to recommend it to the planning board, though, for that further determination. And maybe there's feedback, maybe there's additional information. I don't know how I feel about the ultimate decision myself, but interested in the feedback.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. And one opposition and one absence. Okay. Next item on the agenda is to discuss and act on resolutions. That is the MAP fee. And this is our town clerk, like everybody out there, is seeing increase in costs and is therefore requesting that we increase the fee for these large maps on our fee and fine schedule. That doesn't require an ordinance or anything. We can do that with a simple motion. So she wants to increase that from $3 to $6 to cover the costs. And I wonder, any questions on this?
Related question, it's not specifically or not exclusively about the MAP fee, but with both the zoning board and the planning board, there's a lot of documentation that's required, and sometimes it's required in duplicate or triplicate or whatever the case may be. Are we or have we looked at ways to digitize more of that, allowing everything to be submitted electronically rather than in print form?
Everything through the building permit stage is electronic, nothing by paper. It's a little trickier with the planning board. We get so few applications, and we haven't really worked that out yet, but it's a good goal for in the future. But they need the paper copy currently, the way they don't have necessarily access to a device with everything on it like the council does. But it's a worthy goal eventually, but we're just not there yet. It's just not a lot of these applications that come to the planning board. So,
and there are definitely some things that are 8.5 by 11. There's also big things that you don't want to look at on a screen this size. Yeah. Okay. I'll make a motion to approve a resolution revising the fee and fine schedule as presented to increase the MAP fee from $3 to $6.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries. Next item is to discuss and act on bids. The first is for the Bay team. Okay. This is an RFQ for a project director contract. And we got a note from the Bay Team director that she was not going to be able to make it this evening. Does anyone have any questions about this? Okay. I'll make a motion to approve Jordan Hager as project director in the amount of $46,872 annually, based on the compensation schedule set forth by SAM HSA, with the option for the town to approve one-year extensions following annual reviews during the 5-year grant period.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. And one recusal and one absence. Next item on the agenda is Department of Public Works, the siding for the Bay Spring Community Center. Alan, if you could take us through that.
Sure. If you may recall, the Bay Spring Community Center, we re-roofed the building in 2019. At that time, we also went to bid for vinyl siding. And we had an alternate for vinyl cedar impression siding. And then we went back and forth, and we're back here again. So yeah, I think this is the most reasonable way to handle the siding issue at Bay Spring Community Center. Most cost effective, and it'll make it at least look pretty good. So we're recommending Plan B construction out of Barrington for $77,800, and then including an additional 15% contingency of $11,670 for anything that may, rotten wood or any issues we have that may come up. I don't anticipate a lot, but I think it's good just as a precaution to have a contingency, for a total award of $89,470 at this time. So if you have any questions, I can hopefully answer them.
Any questions? This would involve removing the existing siding, or would it just go over it?
We would put a half-inch insulation board over the entire face of the building, and then wrap all the trim with aluminum, white, I believe aluminum. I'm not sure on the color. I think it would be all Pacific blue, similar to the color there. Not white, but it's either white or Pacific blue for the trim. And then the Cedar Impressions vinyl siding, which looks like regular shingles for the siding itself, and that's what it entail.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll move to award the bid to furnish and install vinyl cedar impression siding at the Bay Spring Community Center to Plan B Construction Company of Barrington for $77,800, plus an additional $11,670, which is a 15% contingency, for a total authorization of $89,470.
A motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Next one is for painting the town hall.
This is another one that, another project that's been ongoing for a couple of years now, and I think with COVID and everything, a lot of our construction projects and bids have been a little bit disheveled. There's been supply chain issues, there's labor issues. So we've went to bid for the repainting of the trim of Town Hall. I would say this is our third time over the last 3 years. And finally, we do have a bidder, 2 bidders, but we're recommending going with Cannizzaro and Sons Painting. They seem to be most prepared. They have a large staff, 10 painters. They have the aerial lift equipment. The low bidder, Plan B Construction, who has the vinyl siding job, he's much smaller. He has 2 painters, and he's going to rent an aerial lift piece of equipment. So and it's a smaller lift. It's only a 65-footer, and I have reservations. I mean, if you ever looked at Town Hall, there's some difficult reaches, and I just want the job done right. This will be power washed, cleaned up, the mold, mildew, scraped, sanded, primer, and 2 coats of paint. So it should last us. Last time we did it was in 2005 when we re-roofed the building. So we got our money's worth out of it, and hopefully this stands the test of time. There is a contingency also of 15%. I'm a little unsure as far as the wood condition at some of the peaks. Last time we did the work, that was 17 years ago. The materials, everything was pretty good. I haven't been up there to actually inspect it. That's one of the faults here. But from on the ground, looking with binoculars and whatnot, everything looked pretty decent. But we do have the contingency in case we hit something that has to be replaced. So I recommend Cannizzaro and Sons for $102,895. With an additional 15% contingency of $15,434 for a total of $118,329, and that'll be out of the town hall repair fund.
Okay. Any questions? Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll move to award the bid to paint the trim at Town Hall to Catanzaro and Sons Painting of Barrington for $102,895, plus an additional $15,434 contingent dollars, which is a 15% contingency, for a total of $118,329, which will be funded out of the Town Hall Improvements Capital Reserve account, which has a balance of $120,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Next one is another DPW. This is for equipment bid recommendations. Actually, I'm seeing that the next one is the Chevy Bolt.
Yeah, we recently went to bid for a building inspector vehicle, which was the Chevrolet Bolt electric utility vehicle. We were very fortunate. We had 2 bidders, one out of East Providence, Paul Massey, and Liberty Chevrolet. Liberty Chevrolet was the low bidder by about $1,500, but there's uncertainty of when they'll get the vehicle. All they told us was sometime in 2023 they'll accept delivery, whereas Paul Massey has readily able to get a vehicle within, I think I put a date, within 28 to 112 days of award. We're finding supply chain issues are definitely hitting our vehicles. I don't know if you recall, we ordered a tree maintenance grappling truck back in March 2020. It was awarded. We still haven't received that truck. So things are very difficult out there. The bidders, I'm very fortunate that this year we had a lot of good interest, which is very good. Two bidders on this one vehicle was very good. Just so you know, too, we're calling the dealerships and talking to salespeople and saying, listen, can I email you the bid package? And that's how we're doing it. And there were more on this. I didn't include them all because the memo would be quite extensive. But so anyway, Liberty Chevrolet, we took out because of the unknown. I don't know about waiting a year for the vehicle or even more. It could be even longer. So what's the old saying? A bird in the hand is better than 2 in the bush. But I'd recommend going with Paul Massey, where we think it looks very good that we'll get the vehicle within a matter of 3 months. So, and that's $31,259. That's after a $5,000 trade for a 2012 Ford Focus.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Do you want to make that motion?
Sure. I'll move to approve the bid for a 2022 Chevrolet Bolt electric utility vehicle from Paul Massey Chevrolet Incorporated in the amount of $31,259, which reflects a trade-in credit of $5,000 for a 2012 Ford Focus, with $29,003 from the building official vehicle capital reserve account and $2,256 from ARPA funding.
Made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. And then the next one was, you tried to get that Lightning.
We did. We advertised, this is the second time this year, we advertised in January, and now we advertised again for the Ford F-150 all-wheel drive electric pickup, and there's still issues of getting the vehicle, so everyone that we contacted were apprehensive about quoting a number because of uncertainties. But we'll keep going. It was approved in our capital budget for an electric pickup truck, which will be for a supervisor, whether it's me or someone with me. But this will be something we'll bid again until we get it, so we will do it. The other one is a regular pickup truck, a four-wheel drive pickup truck, which will be also used for plowing snow. And that is for a 2022, 2022 Chevy Silverado four-wheel drive, and we will fit a plow onto it. We have some plows in the back, but I'm going to make sure the plow package will work with this one. If not, we'll make something work. And that was with also Paul Massey Chevrolet out of East Providence for $53,249, and this was approved out of our capital budget.
Okay. Questions? Does anyone want to make that motion?
Sure. I'll move to approve the bid for the 2022 Chevrolet Silverado four-wheel drive pickup from Paul Massey Chevrolet of East Providence in the amount of $53,249.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the next item up is for the Planning Department proposal for engineering services for South Lake Drive, the shared use path. And our planner, Therese Creedon.
Hi, President Carroll. Hi, councilors. So yes, we're asking for approval this evening for $89,870 to award Park Corporation, which is one of the town's on-call engineers, to complete engineering required to convert South Lake Drive into a multi-use path. PAR will prepare plans, bidding documents, permit applications, and manage subcontractors, including a surveyor and a wetland biologist. Additional fees are required for construction oversight, which will be covered by a proposed contingency of $8,000. The proposed design fee is $64,370, and PAR initially proposed an additional $25,500 to cover reimbursable expenses, most of which would be a topographic survey, but we are following up with PAR Corporation to see if we can get that fee down, and they've indicated that it potentially could be less than $25,500 for the topographic survey services. They did complete an initial engineering analysis of the roadbed to determine potential construction methods, and was able to inform the proposed scope of work submitted for council approval. So the proposed funding sources are $75,000 from ARPA, $22,870 from Parks and Trails Capital Reserve account, so it would leave about $102,000 balance.
Okay. Questions?
We decided earlier to hold off on earmarking those ARPA funds. So is there another potential funding source for this engineering work?
So, let me, did we, for this particular one, actually, I don't think we did approve this one, right?
We did not.
I thought that you approved it. 19A, wayfinding signs?
No,
That's the next one.
It's the next one up.
Oh, the South Lake Drive. No, you didn't. I'm sorry.
Okay. So 75 from ARPA, 22 from Parks and Trails. All right, well, how do we feel about voting again on ARPA funds?
I have a question. What are your thoughts, since we've already continued the ARPA vote on these amounts until the September meeting, would you be comfortable waiting until September on this proposal as well? Or is there a particular reason why you would need to go forward today and move this quicker?
I was going to add to that. It's our on-call contract period with PAR would end at the end of August, so that's the only catch.
So it would be under the current
for
contract
moving now.
terms as opposed to whatever would come next?
We're in the process of bidding it out now. It's probably going to take longer than September 12th to figure all those new responses that come in, so, and that's not necessarily saying PAR would be the go-to contractor. They probably, they're a very good engineer. We wouldn't have gone to them for the quote if we didn't believe that, but so that's why we're trying to move this forward while they're still under this on-call contract period.
Okay, thank you.
So my suggestion is that we approve the ARPA distribution, because if you don't grab the contractor today at the price they're offering tomorrow, it's more. So that's been my experience, and so I would recommend that we do two motions. Actually, I think this motion would cover both. It would also approve the distribution of ARPA funding. But before I make that motion, any discussion on it?
So I have concern about that because it also then moves closer to the 600,000, which is then a large chunk of the next 4 million. And I think it's a lot to spend on that small section of road. And so I'm hesitant on the project now until we have a better picture on what we're going to be doing with sidewalks and other bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure.
I think this is only for engineering, and
Correct.
I had some sticker shock based on the cost of, or the sort of ballpark cost of remediation. As part of this engineering, will they be looking at ways where we can save some money on this? I mean, I don't know how we're going to pay all that money. That is the actual work. $89,000 is a lot of money, but it's not close to what the cost will be, the actual cost of the work. So do we have a sense of whether they can do some value engineering, find some way around not?
I think actually I think it's a pretty long stretch of road from South Lake Drive up to Washington Road. It's all in terrible shape, obviously, and they did the bike path project off of near Hugh Cole School in Warren. That bike path there, that was part. So they're well. They have the obviously experience, probably other examples in the state, but I know that one locally. But I'm sure through that whole stretch, there'll be opportunities to, with different construction methods, to save some money here and there. But that cost estimate, we're going to have sticker shock for every project pretty much with the Complete Streets plan. It's going to be challenging. But I think we will try our best to find cost savings here and there throughout that whole stretch of road. Converting that to a multi-use path would basically be looking at a bike path. What the East Bay bike path is, and also to provide some enhancements in between the end of South Lake Drive where it's closed up to the bike path itself. There's some safety improvements we want to make in that stretch so it's a safe route, and encouraging people to take that short short route to the South Lake Drive bike path. But that does need some safety enhancements as well. So that's part of the scope. So
I do think that this meets the needs of the infrastructure, and especially with the environmental piece of it. We know that there's a lot of wildlife there on that specific road that does connect Washington and Middle. So it's a big piece of land that actually will be really impacted by climate change and flooding. So I think having these environmental scientists in here, I don't think this is the same thing as a sunshade. So I could easily, I think, and again, the 600,000 doesn't necessarily have to happen all in the next period of time, but this really will be the best price I think we'd get for the engineering review that then would lead us to be able to make better decisions going on.
That's right. I agree with that, because I think PAR is not going to be offering a reduction in their rates at the next negotiation. Yes.
Yeah, thanks. And I just want to echo that. I had the exact same thought that Phil mentioned. I think there's going to be a lot of sticker shock, and this price isn't going to get any better. But I agree that it is a safety issue too. I ran up and down that path. You're asking for a sprained ankle. People bike, older people walk up and down the path. And I drive by that area fairly often, and it's constantly in use. So I actually really enjoy that people are taking advantage of it as a walking trail. So to the extent that we can improve it and potentially have other benefits, I think now is probably the time to do it.
Okay. Anything else, Councilor Bryan? Does anyone want to make that motion?
Yeah, sure. If you'd like to.
I'll make the motion. I'll make a motion to award the bid to PAR Corporation of Lincoln, Rhode Island in the amount of $64,370 plus an additional $25,500 for reimbursable expenses and an $8,000 contingency to complete engineering to convert the closed portion of the South Lake Drive into a multi-use path with $75,000 from ARPA funding and $22,870 from the Parks and Trails Capital Reserve account.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Next one is wayfinding signage, and this has been long in the queue. But we did approve money. We didn't actually approve the contract, and this is the contract.
Correct. So we are requesting approval of $108,665.62 to award Viewpoint Sign and Awning of Northborough, Massachusetts, with a contract to produce signage for the town's wayfinding signage project, offering branding for Barrington and directional assistance. And the funding from this comes from a grant that was received by the town from Commerce RI, and also we have the Village Center Streetscape Bond, as well as ARPA money. And the grant proposal does call for the Rhode Island Commerce RI grant proposal called for a $25,050 cash match from the town. So the town did receive one bid in response to its request for bid. We had about 8 inquiries into the bid process, but only one firm submitted a bid. And this is consistent with our comprehensive community plan that recognizes that wayfinding project is a key economic development strategy helping Barrington continue its shift from auto-dependent suburban shopping center form of development towards a walkable retail zones in the village center and neighborhood business districts.
I just have one question.
Sure.
So this was the only bid, and it looks like they were a qualified bidder based on the examples you provided.
Yes.
Was that about the price range that you would expected, would you say?
Working with our signage consultant, Surface Matter Designs, they reviewed the bid for accuracy and for completeness, and in their opinion, it was a very qualified bid that is representative of the price point that was expected.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Phil has a question. President Carroll?
Yes.
I just want to clarify, it's probably a little confusing. We see a different number than what was stated. The $111,935.62 reflects, in addition to that base bid that Teresa mentioned, the cost for the performance and payment bonds that they also included on that bid sheet. And so that we confirmed that that was what the number is. So I included that in the motion. $111,935.62, and that contingency is based on the portion of the bid that omits the performance and payment bond, so that would be 10% of the $108,665. Just to explain, that's why it's the discrepancies in the motion and what was quoted.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the bid of $111,935.62 from Viewpoint Sign and Awning of Northborough, Mass. Plus a contingency totaling $10,866 for fabrication and installation of wayfinding signs. Funding sources include $49,860 from the Commerce Rhode Island Main Streetscape Improvement Grant, $54,184 from the Village Center Streetscape Bond, and up to $19,000 from the ARPA funds.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Next one is the archaeology.
Okay. So the town was awarded last year a grant from the National Park Service's Battlefield Preservation, it's the American Battlefield Protection Program, and it's the Battlefield Preservation Grant Program that awarded us a grant of $113,875.64 to conduct an archaeological investigation into Lot 3A on George Street, it's Plat 37, Lot 3A, for a project, A Place Called Knockham and the Inception of King Philip's War. And that grant awarded to the town allowed us to go out to bid for the Public Archaeology Survey Team. The acronym is PAST. And they gave us a quote for $67,156.04 to complete the archaeology at this site. The remaining balance of the grant will be held for costs related to tribal expertise as the project proceeds. And right now it's anticipated that the town has there will be no cost to the town of this project, that the National Park Service will handle the tribal coordination and collaboration at that phase. So this request is for $67,156.04 to award the Public Archaeology Survey Team with a contract to complete archaeological services.
Okay. Any questions?
I have a question just about the engagement with the tribal input or the tribal expertise. So that's being handled by the National
Park Service. Yes.
Does the town have any involvement in which tribes are involved, or in that interaction, or is that fully handled by them?
Those tribal groups that were engaged as part of this grant program, I believe the Aquinnah, the Wampanoags, Mashpee, I don't have the list in front of me, and also the Narragansett Indian tribe have been engaged, and there's been communications with those tribal leaders throughout this process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Just for clarification, it's Narragansett, Mashpee, Wampanoags, Aquinnah, Wampanoags, and then also, despite being not federally recognized, the Poconoke tribe as well has been included in the conversation.
Okay. Does anyone want to make this motion?
I'll move to award a bid of $67,156.04 to the 501c3 Public Archaeology Survey Team, known as PAST Incorporated, to complete archaeological investigation at Assessor's Plat 37, Lot 3A, for the project, quote, A Place Called Knockham in the Inception of King Philip's War, end quote, subject to all approvals from the National Park Service required for entering into the contract.
Made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next part of our agenda is to discuss and act on ordinances. The first one is introduction, and the first one is a request from our town manager to reduce the Monday hours from 8 p.m. to 7 p.m. with the idea that they would make up the hours throughout the week, because the 7 to 8 period has been a kind of a dead time. Is that right?
Correct.
Any questions about that? Okay.
Do they all go home at 8 o'clock?
What's that?
On town council nights, or are you going to go home at 7?
You have to stay here
They
for
can
town
come-
council
I'm
meetings.
just kidding.
Everybody's free to come to the council meeting because they don't have to work until 8.
That's right. Okay, I will make a motion to introduce ordinance 2022-14, an ordinance amendment to Chapter 144, Public Lands, use of, Section 144-15, Town Hall Business Hours.
Second.
Do I have to set a hearing date? Shouldn't we set a hearing date for that?
The next meeting, right? Be September 12th?
Yes, and to set a hearing date for September 12,
Second as
2022.
amended.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. The next one is regarding cannabis, and this is Councilor Breyers. Do you want to take us through this?
Yes, the purpose here is just like we have a prohibition on smoking and vaping tobacco products on town property. Well, not all town property, it's all parks and recreational property and the beach. This would do the same for cannabis. And so smoking or vaping cannabis products would be prohibited as well.
Okay.
It's in its own separate section because that'll conform most closely with the state regulation.
Okay. Any questions? Do you want to make that motion?
Sure, and we have a pretty full agenda, it looks like, for September, and I also think this can help with engagement around the referendum that'll be in November, so I'd like to schedule, my motion's going to be to schedule it for our October meeting. I just wanted to pull up the date, if that's okay. So that would be the 3rd. So motion to introduce ordinance 2022-17, an ordinance to adopt Chapter 80 cannabis and schedule a public hearing for October 3rd.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Okay, I skipped one that is on the agenda, but this is, so we'll go back to it. This is introducing a stop sign at Bowden Avenue, north and south at the intersection of King Philip Avenue. And on King Philip Avenue, west from Massasoit, at the intersection of Bowden. So just adding stop signs to that intersection. So we don't have a draft of that, but that is, I'll make a motion to introduce ordinance 2022-16, an ordinance and amendment to Chapter 179 Vehicles and Traffic in the Code of Barrington. And to set a public hearing date for September 12, 2022.
Second.
Further discussion?
Yes. A question and a comment. One, Bowden, in the draft of the ordinance is spelled incorrectly, and so I think the title it's correct, but then it's spelled as the college lower down. And then I noticed it's now set up as a three-way stop with one direction on King Philip not having a stop sign. And I was just curious as to why that is and if it should just be an all-way.
The chief can answer that. Please.
The reasoning was based on the concern of the neighborhood is it's a cut-through to circumvent the traffic and Massasoit over the bridge. The dead-end side of the street, there's only a few houses. I think it would just be an added cost and really wouldn't achieve what the desired outcome is, which is to deter people from using it as a cut-through. That's the purpose.
I'm sorry, was that motion seconded?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Okay, now we are at the public hearing, and the first matter for public hearing is 2022-14, an ordinance amendment to Chapter 45, Salaries and Compensation for Non-Union Employees. I am opening the public hearing, and Marianne Oliveira, could you just take us through the purpose of this? If you don't remember, that's okay.
To be honest, I don't know what the original purpose was. However, generally speaking, right after the FTM, when the budget has been approved, we take the salaries and we kind of put them out there. There is a 10% buffer in there in case someone left and we had to rehire that position. We have some wiggle room. But, that is a good question, how this originated. I don't know.
No, that's fine. I was
Yeah.
really just talking about what the purpose was.
Sure. To be transparent with the salaries.
Right.
Yeah.
Any questions? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, I'm closing the public hearing. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll move to adopt the 2022-14, an ordinance amendment to Chapter 45, Salaries and Compensation for Non-Union Employees, as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
Town manager has.
I have a request to change the title of the one for, how's it described now, but I guess it's, shoot, I lost my track of the, here we go. Rather than Economic Development Officer / Communications Manager, I would like to change that title to Communications Engagement and Economic Development Officer.
I'll add that amendment to my motion.
And who seconded it? Did you second?
Councilor Conway did it.
Did you second this?
Yes, I did.
Will you second
Yes,
that?
I will.
Okay. Do you have that, Mary?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Further discussion?
I have just one comment that I think relates to something HR director was saying. I don't know that this ordinance is necessarily needed. I think it because it adjusts every year based on what's decided basically by the FTM and the current salaries, I think it can be removed. I know at times in the past it's presented a problem with either retention or hiring, and then causing then a delay to come back for an ordinance amendment. I think if the budget works for a salary change, it's really a management decision, not a council decision. Or I think the alternative is to say strategically, this is the maximum we should spend on a role regardless of who's in it, but then that creates a management problem. So I support the changes. I think they're fine, but I think it might be worth exploring the impact of just eliminating this so it doesn't present obstacles in the future.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Next one is the renewal of our declaration of emergency. The state is still in a declaration of emergency. So when the state comes out of a state of emergency, the town will automatically come out of that. But I am opening the public hearing into ordinance 2022-15, renewal of declaration of emergency. Would anyone from the public like to be heard on this? Okay, seeing no one, I'm closing the public hearing. Any comments from the council? I'll make a motion to adopt 2022-15, renewal of declaration of emergency as presented. Is there made and seconded? Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries. Okay. Next item on the agenda is to set the agenda for Monday, September 12. We do have a pretty full agenda for that date. But at this point, we have discuss and act on the invasive species control at Echo Lake. This has been continued and given Mr. Barton an opportunity to try to get a greater contribution from the Rhode Island Country Club. We were contacted by a constituent, and I urged the constituents to contact Mr. Barton and see what they could do to help with the country club. Yes, go ahead.
Quick update, I met with the country club today, just to keep the discussion going about granting the property to the town or some other type of arrangement, and so just trying to keep that dialogue going.
Okay. Next one is to discuss and act on evaluating the financial town meeting. That's Councilor Breyer's recommendation, and I think Mary is pulling together sort of past examples of this for us, so we'll be able to look at that.
So I'd say my goal wasn't to discuss and act on changes. It's more to establish a committee that would evaluate it, rather than us evaluating it, and then make a recommendation to the next Charter Review Commission, so that the Charter Review Commission doesn't have to take up its time with that. It can receive, information in advance. Yeah.
Okay. We will have a presentation or not in September? You think we will? On the new website?
Yes.
Okay.
I was just waiting for the hybrid meeting, so it could be shared like that. And so if you can see it, the share screen.
Great. And then the complete streets plan will be presented to us.
I think it's going to be actually discuss and act. You might have an amended plan because we're trying to get set up for, this might help us with the fully funding the complete streets plan, because there's a substantial amount of grant money out there that this complete streets plan could put us in positions to apply for.
Your microphone, I think, is off.
Oh, sorry. Just talking. Sorry. If we amend the complete streets plan in a certain way that addresses some of the requirements of this new federal funding that's coming out for like basically complete streets types of projects that would zero out pedestrian. The goal is to make it zero pedestrian and bicycle safety. Deaths in towns. Fortunately, we haven't had any deaths. I'm not sure if that hurts our application, but it's worth applying for because it's a substantial amount of money. That's a good problem to have actually not have but we have evaluated safety concerns throughout town as part of this complete streets plan. A lot of these safety concerns are centered on the bike path crossings. There's so many incidents at bike path crossings, so that could help us score points. A lot of communities don't have a plan that's ready to go that would qualify for this funding. So if we can get in that first group, maybe we have a shot at it. So we're looking at discuss and act on the complete streets plan.
The other one is to discuss and act on the fiber optic project, and I'm looking forward to hearing that from Kathy. That would be to put fiber inside the town hall. And to the town hall, or do we have it? Okay. So I just want to make sure that is starting from fiber, because if you start from fiber, go to copper, and then go to fiber, the second fiber isn't doing you a whole lot of good. Then there's the Bike to Beach on September 17th. Discuss business registration. That's a Rhode Island general laws. And this is something we'll talk about. It would involve additional burden on the clerk's office, so we're going to have to keep that in mind as we evaluate the pros and cons of this, and what would be needed in order for the clerk's office to be able to execute on this. And then on Sunday, October 2, we have the Rhode Island Slave History Medallion installation ceremony at the library, with a reception to follow in the Collis Gallery. Is there anything else anyone wants to add to the agenda?
Yes. We're going to have the ARPA stuff again.
Yes, the ARPA stuff will be in there. Anything else?
Intermission, maybe?
An intermission, yes. I'm going to add that.
And the resolution for Juneteenth. The resolution to...
That'll just be an introduction.
Okay.
Yes, yep, that's right. We will introduce that as a...
Well,
As a resolution.
No, the resolution wouldn't be an introduction, right? We added a resolution.
Oh, yes.
In addition to the ordinance.
That's right, a resolution to the General Assembly.
Right.
Okay. All right, and again, if there's anything else, just let me know, and we'll try to get it on this agenda. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.